Genesis. In a beginning Elohim created the visible universe and the earth. And the earth became formless, and waste, and darkness was upon the surface of the sea. And the Spirit of Elohim hovered upon the surface of the waters. And Elohim spoke, saying, Let light exist, and there was light. And Elohim looked at the light and saw that it was good, and Elohim separated the light from the darkness. Elohim proclaimed the light day, and the darkness night. And the nightfall and the daybreak were the first day. Elohim spoke, saying, Let there be a solid surface among the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And Elohim fashioned the atmosphere, and separated the waters beneath from the waters above, and it was so. Elohim called the atmosphere sky. And the nightfall and daybreak were the second day. Elohim spoke, saying, Let the waters under the atmosphere be collected together towards each locality, and let the dry land become visible, and it was so. And Elohim proclaimed the dry land earth, and the collecting together of the waters he called seas, and Elohim inspected and it was valuable in estimation. Elohim spoke, saying, Let the earth grow green grass, the green plant producing seed, and the fruit tree producing fruit after its species, according to its kind, and it was firmly done. The earth grew green grass, and green plant producing seed after its species, and the tree producing fruit, after its seed kind, and Elohim inspected and it was valuable in estimation. And the nightfall and the daybreak were the third day. Elohim spoke, saying, Let there be lights in the expanse of the cosmos to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs, sacred seasons, days, and years. And let them be for lights in the cosmos of the sky to shine light upon the earth, and it was firmly done. And Elohim made two intense lights, the larger sunlight to rule the day, and the lesser moonlight to rule the night, the stars he made too. Then Elohim employed them in the cosmos of heaven to shine light upon the earth, and to have dominion over the day and night, to separate the light from the darkness, and Elohim saw that it was excellent. And the sunset and the sunrise were the fourth day. Elohim spoke, saying, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the swarming things that have life, and flying creatures, that fly above the surface under the canopy of water, in the skies. Elohim created great serpents, and every living creature that creeps and moves, which the waters teemed forth abundantly after their species, and every winged flying creature after its species, and Elohim inspected and it was valuable in estimation. And Elohim blessed them, saying, Branch off, multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let flying creatures increase on earth. And the sunset and the sunrise were the fifth day. Elohim spoke, saying, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after their species, animals, and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after their species, and it was firmly done. And Elohim made the creatures of the earth after their species, and beasts after their species, and everything that creeps upon the earth after their species, and Elohim inspected and it was valuable in estimation. Elohim spoke, saying, Let us fashion man in our image, and after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the flying creatures of the sky, and over the beasts, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So Elohim created man in his own image, in the image of Elohim was mankind created, male and female fashioned he them. And Elohim blessed them, and Elohim spoke to them, saying, Be fruitful and become many, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the flying creatures of the sky, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. Then Elohim spoke, saying, See, I have given you every green plant bearing seed, which is upon the surface of all the earth, and every tree, containing the produce of the tree bearing seed, to you it shall be for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every flying creature of the sky, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, where there is life, I have given every green plant for food, and thus it was done. Elohim inspected everything that he had accomplished, and behold, it was valuable in estimation. And the sunset and the sunrise were the sixth day. Thus the cosmos and the earth were completed, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day Elohim completed his work which he had fashioned, and he ceased working on the seventh day from all which he had done. And Elohim blessed the seventh day, and made it sacred, because on that day he had rested from all the work that he had fashioned. This is the birth of the cosmos and the earth when they were accomplished, in the day when YHWH Elohim fashioned the earth and cosmos, and every organism of the field before it existed in the soil, and every green plant of the field before it sprouted, for YHWH Elohim had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to work the soil. Then there ascended a cloudiness from the earth, and watered the whole surface of the land. YHWH Elohim fashioned man of the particles of the ground, and blew through his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living creation. And YHWH Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he placed the man whom he had fashioned. And out of the ground made YHWH Elohim to sprout every tree that is desirable to the sight, and pleasant for food, the tree of life also in the middle of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and divided, and became 4 chief tributaries. The name of the first is Pison, which encircles the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good, there is bdellium and the gemstone. The name of the second river is Gihon, which encircles the whole land of Ethiopia. The name of the third river is Hiddekel, which flows towards the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. Then YHWH Elohim took away the man, and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work and guard the estate. And YHWH Elohim commanded the man, saying, Every tree in the garden is consumable for food, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You are commanded not to consume it, for in the time you consume of it, you will experience the death penalty. YHWH Elohim spoke, saying, It is not good that the man should exist alone, so I will fashion him one who helps. And from the earth YHWH Elohim fashioned every living creature of the field, and every flying creature of the sky, and brought them to Adam to consider the names to give them, and however Adam named each living creature, so were they named. And Adam gave names to all animal life, and to the flying creatures of the sky, and to every living creature of the field, but for Adam there was not found one who helps. So YHWH Elohim caused a deep sleep to descend on Adam, and he slept, and he removed one of his ribs, and then closed up his flesh. The rib that YHWH Elohim had removed from man, from it he made a woman, and brought her to the man. And Adam said, This one is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh, this one shall be named woman, because she was taken out of man. Then shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall join to the woman, and they will become one flesh. And both of them were naked, the man and woman, but felt no shame. Moreover the serpent was craftier than any of the living creatures of the land that YHWH Elohim had fashioned. And he spoke to the woman, saying, Indeed has Elohim commanded, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden. The woman answered the serpent, We can eat the fruit of the trees in the garden, but the fruit of the tree that is in the center of the garden, Elohim has said, You shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, or beware that you will die. And the serpent replied to the woman, You shall not be put to death as the penalty. Because Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, then your eyes will be opened, and you shall be as Elohim, knowing good and bad. And when the woman inspected the tree that it had good food, and was tantalizing to the eyes, a tree inclined to make one understand wisdom, she grabbed and ate the fruit, giving also to her husband, and he ate too. And both their eyes were opened, and they perceived their nakedness, and sewed fig leafage together, and made loin coverings. Then they heard the sound of YHWH Elohim walking in the garden at the time of the winds of the day, and Adam and his woman hid themselves from the face of YHWH Elohim among the central trees of the garden. Then YHWH Elohim called to Adam saying, Where are you? And he answered, I heard your voice in the garden and I was fearful, because of my nakedness, and I hid myself. And he replied, Who revealed to you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to feed from? And the man replied, The woman you bestowed to me, she gave me of the tree, and I did feed. Then YHWH Elohim spoke to the woman, saying, What have you done? And the woman answered, The serpent deceived me, and I did feed. YHWH Elohim spoke to the serpent, saying, Because you have done this, you are cursed of all the animals, and from all living things of the field. On your belly you shall move, and dry earth you shall feed on all the days of your life. And I will put hatred between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, crushed shall be your head and crushed shall be his heel. Then to the woman he spoke, saying, I will greatly increase the pain of your pregnancy, in pain you shall engender children, and your needs will come from your husband, and he shall have dominion over you. Then to Adam he spoke, saying, Because you have listened to the voice of the woman, and have consumed of the tree which I commanded you, saying, You shall not feed from it, cursed is the land, in hardship you shall feed from it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles will it sprout forth to you, and you will eat the green plants from the field. In the sweat of your face shall you eat food, until you return to the ground, for out of it were you taken, for dry earth is your composition, and unto it you will return. Then Adam proclaimed his woman to be renamed Eve, because she was the mother of all living. For Adam and his woman renamed Eve, YHWH Elohim made garments of linen and animal hides, and dressed them. YHWH Elohim spoke, saying, Behold, the man is numbered as one of us, to know good and bad. Now, fearing that he would stretch out his hand, to seize the tree of life to feed from it, and live for ages of time, YHWH Elohim then sent him away from the Garden of Eden, to labor on the land from where he had been taken. So he expelled the man, and he settled him down east of the Garden of Eden and stationed cherubim, and a flaming sword which transformed, guarding the road to the tree of life. And Adam sexually possessed the woman Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain, and said, I have obtained a male from YHWH. And she gave birth again to Abel his brother. Abel was a shepherd of flocks, but Cain was a farmer of the soil. And at the end of the season, Cain brought the produce of the soil as an offering to YHWH. And Abel brought the firstborn of his flock, the valued and prized choice. YHWH had respect for Abel and his offering, but to Cain and his offering he had no regard. Then Cain was very angry, and his face became cast down. And YHWH speaking to Cain said, Why are you angry? And why is your face cast down? If you do what is pleasing, will you not have your dignity? And if you do not do good, sin prostrates itself under your doorway. Sin craves to possess you, but you must master it. Cain spoke with much anger against his brother Abel in the field. Cain then rose against his brother Abel and killed him. Then YHWH spoke to Cain, saying, Where is Abel your brother? And he replied, I do not know, am I my brother's keeper? And he spoke, saying, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And now are you cursed from the earth, which has opened her mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall not increase and produce to you her wealth. A fugitive and a wanderer shall you be on the earth. Cain replied to YHWH, My punishment is greater than I can bear. You have cast me out this day from your presence on the earth, and from your face shall I be hidden, and I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, so then it will be that anyone who finds me will then kill me. YHWH answered him, Anyone killing Cain will have vengeance taken on him 7 times. Then YHWH placed a distinguishing sign on Cain, unless anyone finding him should kill him. Then Cain departed from the presence of YHWH, and resided in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And Cain sexually possessed his woman, and she became pregnant, and gave birth to Enoch, and he built a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Then to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad engendered Mehujael, and Mehujael engendered Methuselah, and Methuselah engendered Lamech. Then Lamech acquired 2 women, one was named Ada, and the other Zillah. Then Ada engendered Jabal, he was the father of those that abide in nomadic tents, and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, he was the father of all that skillfully handle the lyre and other musical instruments. Then Zillah engendered Tuvalcain, a teacher of all metal crafting in copper, bronze and iron. The sister of Tuvalcain was named Naamah. Lamech said to his women, Ada and Zillah, Hear my voice, women of Lamech, listen to my speech, for I have killed a man to my wounding and a young man to my injury. If Cain shall be avenged 7 times, truly Lamech 70 and 7-fold. Then Adam sexually possessed his woman again, and she engendered a son, and called his name Seth, for she said, Elohim has appointed me another offspring instead of Abel, whom Cain had killed. And to Seth was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then was a desecration made when they invoked the name of YHWH. This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that Elohim created man, in the likeness of Elohim fashioned he him, male and female created he them, and blessed them, and proclaimed their name Adam, in the day of their creation. Adam lived 130 years, and engendered a son after his own likeness and image, calling his name Seth. The years of Adam after Seth was born were 800 years, and he engendered sons and daughters. And all the years that Adam lived were 930, and he died. Seth lived 105 years, and engendered Enos. And Seth lived after he engendered Enos 807 years, and engendered more sons and daughters. All the years of Seth were 912, and he died. And Enos lived 90 years, and engendered Canaan. Enos lived after he engendered Canaan 815 years, and produced more sons and daughters. All the years of Enos were 905, and he died. Canaan lived 70 years, and engendered Mahalaleel. And Canaan lived after he engendered Mahalaleel 840 years, giving birth to more sons and daughters. All the years of Canaan were 910, and he died. Mahalaleel lived 65 years, and engendered Jared. And Mahalaleel lived after he gave birth to Jared 830 years, and engendered more sons and daughters. All the years of Mahalaleel were 895, and he died. Jared lived 162 years, and he engendered Enoch. And Jared lived after he engendered Enoch 800 years, and produced more sons and daughters. All the years of Jared were 962, and he died. Enoch lived 65 years, and engendered Methuselah. And Enoch walked with Elohim, after he gave birth to Methuselah, 300 years, and engendered sons and daughters. All the years of Enoch were 365. And Enoch walked with Elohim, and disappeared, seeing how Elohim took him away. Methuselah lived 187 years, and engendered Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he gave birth to Lamech 782 years, and engendered more sons and daughters. All the years of Methuselah were 969, and he died. Lamech lived 182 years, and gave birth to a son. And he called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us in the work and toil of our hands, because of the land YHWH has cursed. Lamech lived after he gave birth to Noah 595 years, and engendered numerous sons and daughters. All the years of Lamech were 777 and he died. After Noah was 500 years old, then Noah gave birth to Shem, Ham, and Japheth. When mankind increased and desecrated the surface of the land, and had daughters engendered, then the sons of the angels looked upon the daughters of mankind as being voluptuous, and acquired women of all they chose. YHWH spoke, saying, My breath will not always plead with mankind, for he is flesh, yet his lifetime will be 120 years. There were Nephilim in the land in those days, after the sons of the angels fell upon the daughters of mankind, and they engendered powerful ones, age-lasting mortal persons of great fame. The inspection of Elohim found the wickedness of man abounding in the land, and that every purpose of the devices in his inner being were persistently malignant. So it sorrowed YHWH that he had fashioned mankind on the land, and it grieved him to his heart. Then YHWH spoke, saying, I will wipe out man whom I have fashioned from the face of the land, both man, animal, creeping organisms, and the flying creatures of the sky, for it sorrows me that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of YHWH. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a lawful man and wholesome in his generations, and Noah walked with Elohim. And Noah engendered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The land surface was in ruins before Elohim, and the whole earth was full of violence. And Elohim inspected the land, and it was in ruins, for all human beings had ruined his course of life on earth. And Elohim spoke to Noah, saying, Doomsday for all human beings will come to pass before my presence, for the land is full of violence because of them. I shall destroy them in the land. Construct yourself an ark, vessel, of gopher wood, making rooms in the ark, using a pitch to seal it inside and out. You are to fashion this ark to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide and 45 feet high. A porthole for light you shall make for the ark, and to 18 inches shall you finish it above, and for the opening of the ark on the side you shall put the lower, second, and third stories, making it this way. Take note, I will fetch waters to flood the earth, and to destroy all human beings who have life breath in their residence under the skies. And as a result, everything in the land shall die. But with you I will establish my covenant, and you shall come into the ark, you with your sons and your woman and your sons' women with you. And every living thing of all the animals, 2 of every kind you shall bring into the ark, to sustain alive both male and female with you. Of flying creatures after their species, and of animals after their species, of every creeping thing on the land after its species, 2 of every kind shall come to you, for sustaining them alive. Take for yourselves all food to be eaten, and you shall collect foodstuffs, and it will be food for yourselves, and those animals also. Noah did as Elohim commanded him, accomplishing his tasks. YHWH spoke to Noah, saying, You and all your house are to come into the ark, for you I have considered righteous before me in this generation. Of all the clean animals you shall take 7 pairs, male and female, and of animals that are not clean take 2 pairs, male and female. Regarding flying creatures of the sky take 7 pairs, male and female, to keep offspring alive for the surface of all the land. Moreover, in 7 days I will cause it to rain on the land 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have fashioned will be exterminated from off the surface of the land. Noah did according to all that YHWH commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came upon the land. Then Noah entered the ark with his sons, and his woman, and his sons' women with him because of the floodwaters. Of clean and unclean animals, and of flying creatures, and of all things that move lightly on the land, pairs of them entered the ark with Noah, male and female, as Elohim had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, floodwaters were upon the land. In the 600th year, 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month in Noah's life, this very day were all the springs of the great depths split open, and the windows of the sky canopy were let loose. And the rain flooded the land 40 days and 40 nights. On the same day entered Noah into the ark, with Shem, Ham, and Japheth, his sons, and Noah's woman with the 3 women of his sons also. They, and every living thing after their species, and all the animals after their species, and every creeping thing that moves upon the land after their species, and every flying creature after its species, all birds of every sort. They entered with Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all living things, that have the breath of living. And they went in, both male and female of all living things as Elohim had commanded, and YHWH shut up the ark. The flood was 40 days upon the land, and the waters increased, and lifted up the ark, and it rose above the land. And the waters prevailed, and multiplied exceedingly on the land, and the ark moved upon the surface of the violent waters. So the waters strengthened exceedingly on the land, and all the high mountains under the whole sky were covered. Upwards of 20 feet did the waters overcome the mountains, and they were covered. All living things then died that moved on the earth, flying creatures, animals, and also the living vegetation, as well as every creeping thing that moves on the land, including all human beings. The totality of the living in whose nostrils flowed the breath of life, total genocide for those living on the dry land. And every living substance was exterminated from the surface of the land, both man, and animal, and the creeping things, and the flying creatures of the sky, and were destroyed from the land, and only Noah was left alive and those with him in the ark. Now the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. Then Elohim remembered Noah, and the living things, and all the animals with him in the ark, and Elohim overflowed a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters abated. The springs of the deep places, and the windows of the sky were shut up. The rain was then restrained from falling from the skies. Then the waters turned back from off the earth, and departed after the end of 150 days, and were made lower. The ark settled itself down in the 7th month, 17th day, upon the mountains of Ararat. The waters lowered continually until the 10th month. Then in the 10th month, 1st day, the tops of the mountains appeared. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days, that Noah opened the window of the ark he had made, sending out a raven, which went about encircling, until the waters were dried up from off the land. Also he sent out a pigeon, to see if the waters were moved lower from off the surface of the land. But the pigeon found no resting place for the sole of its foot, and returned to him into the ark, because the waters still resided on the surface of all the land. He then reached out his hand and took the pigeon, and pulled it into the ark. Then he anxiously awaited another 7 days, and again he sent out the pigeon from the ark. The pigeon came back to him in the evening, and lo, in its mouth an olive leaf freshly picked. So Noah knew that the waters had lowered from off the land. He waited another 7 days, and sent out the pigeon again, and it did not return to him. And it came to pass in year 601, the 1st month and 1st day, the waters dried up from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering from the ark, and looking saw that the surface of the land was dry. The land had dried up in the 2nd month on the 27th day. And Elohim spoke to Noah saying, Leave the ark, you, and your woman, and your sons' women with you. Bring out with you every living thing, the animals, the flying creatures, and the livestock, and all the creeping things that move upon the land, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, increasing and multiplying on the land. And Noah went out with his sons, and his woman, and his sons' women with him. Every living thing, every creeping thing, and every flying creature, and anything that moves on the land, after their species, went out from the ark. And Noah built an altar to Yhwh, and took of every clean animal, and of every clean flying creature, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Yhwh smelled a sweet aroma, and Yhwh uttered from his heart, I will never again make despicable the land again on man's account, for the devices of man's heart are bad from his childhood, neither will I repeat killing everything living as I have done. While the earth has days, sowing and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not fail. Elohim blessed Noah and his sons, and spoke to them, saying, Branch off and become numerous, and fill up the land. And the fear and terror of you shall be on every living thing of the land, and on every flying creature of the sky, on all that move upon the land, and on all the fish of the sea, into your hand are they bestowed. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, even as the green plants have I given you all things. But flesh with life in it, being the blood of it, you will not eat. And indeed the blood of your life will I seek, at the sight of every living thing will I seek it, and at the sight of man, at the sight of every man's brother will I seek the life of man. Anyone who spills the blood of man, by man will his blood be spilled, for in the image of Elohim man was fashioned. Now you, branch off, and become numerous by breeding on the land, and become great in it. Elohim spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, I establish my covenant with you, and your offspring after you, and with all living creatures with you, of the flying creatures, animals, living things of the land, to include everything going out from the ark, and every living thing of the land. And I will establish my covenant with you, never shall all living things be destroyed by floodwaters, never will another flood destroy the land. Then Elohim spoke, saying, This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you, and all living creatures with you, for periods age lasting. I do bestow my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be for a covenant sign between me and the land. And it will happen that when I bring clouds over the land, that a rainbow shall be seen in the clouds, then I will recall my covenant between me and you, including all living creatures of flesh, floodwaters will no more destroy all the living things. And the rainbow shall be in the clouds, and when I look at it, I will recall the age-lasting covenant between Elohim and every living creature of all flesh residing on the land. Elohim spoke to Noah, saying, This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the land. Then the sons of Noah that went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and from these, they scattered themselves over the whole land. And Noah, the man, first gathered grapes, and planted a vineyard, and he drank the wine, and became drunk, and he exposed his nakedness inside his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, looked at the nudity of his father, and told his 2 brothers outside. Shem and Japheth then took a garment and, laying it on each of their shoulders together, walked backwards, to cover the nudity of their father, and their faces were faced backwards and they did not see their father's nudity. After Noah awoke from his wine, he knew that his younger son had castrated him. And he said, Cursed is Canaan, a slave of servants shall he be to his brothers. And he said, Blessed is Yhwh Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his slave. Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall reside in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his slave. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. The sum of years for Noah's life were 950, and he died. Now these are the genealogies of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and to them were engendered sons after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dodanim. By these were the regions of the Gentiles separated in their lands, according to their dialect, and their families within their respective nations. The sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Raamah, Sabteca, and the sons of Raamah, Sheba, Dedan. And Cush engendered Nimrod, a mighty one who desecrated the land. He was a mighty hunter before Yhwh, and it was said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before Yhwh. The debut of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From that land embarked Ashur who built Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth and Calah. And reason between Nineveh and Calah, the same is a great city. Then Mizraim engendered Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, Casluhim, out of whom came Philistine, and Caphtorim. Then Canaan engendered Sidon his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, Amorite, Girgasite, and the Hivite, Archite, Sinite, and the Arvadite, Zemarite, Hamathite, and afterward were the clans of the Canaanites spread abroad. The territory of Canaan reached from Sidon towards Gerar, as far as Gaza, and then towards Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham, according to their clans and dialects, in the lands of their nations. Unto Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to whom were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, Aram. The children of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, Mash. Then Arphaxad engendered Salah, and Salah engendered Eber. Then to Eber were engendered 2 sons, the name of the firstborn was Peleg, in his time the land was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Then Joktan engendered Almodad, Shaleth, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Deklah, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. Their region was from Mesha, reaching to Sephir the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem, according to their clans and dialects in the lands of their nations. These are the tribes of the sons of Noah, after their genealogies, according to their nationalities, and by these tribes the nations separated in the land after the flood. Now the whole land was of one language, and of one speech. In their journeys from the east, they found a level valley in the land of Shinar, and made a settlement there. Then they said to each other, Permit us to make white brick, and fire them thoroughly. They also had brick, for stone, and putty for cement. Then they said, Come, let us establish a city and a tower, whose top may connect with the sky, and let us acquire a glory, unless we are dispersed again on the surface of the land. Then Yhwh came down to see the city and the tower that the children of men constructed. And Yhwh spoke, saying, Observe, this people are one, and they all share one language, and this desecration they commence, and now nothing will fence them in from what they have planned to do. Dispatch now, march down, and mix their language that they may not understand each other's speech. So Yhwh dispersed them thither on the surface of the land, and they ceased the work of establishing the city. The name of it is called Babylon, because YHWH dispatched to mix the language of the land, and from then on YHWH dispersed them around the land surface. This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, and engendered Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. Shem lived, after he engendered Arphaxad, 500 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Arphaxad lived 35 years, and engendered Salah, and Arphaxad lived, after he engendered Salah, 403 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Salah lived to 30, and engendered Eber, and Salah lived, after he engendered Eber, 403 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years, and engendered Peleg, and Eber lived, after he engendered Peleg, 430 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Peleg lived to 30, and engendered Ru, and Peleg lived, after he engendered Ru, 209 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Ru lived to 32, and engendered Serug, and Ru lived, after he engendered Serug, 207 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Serug lived to 30, and engendered Nahor, and Serug lived, after he engendered Nahor, 200 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years, and engendered Terah, and Nahor lived, after he engendered Terah, 119 years, and engendered sons and daughters. Terah lived 70 years, and engendered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah engendered Abram, Nahor, and Haran engendered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldees. Then Abram and Nahor acquired themselves women. The name of Abram's woman was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's woman, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai, being sterile, had no children. Then Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's woman, and they departed with them from Ur of the Chaldeans, going into the land of Canaan, and came to Haran, and remained there. The years of Terah's lifespan were 205, and Terah died in Haran. Now YHWH had spoken to Abram, saying, Get yourself out of your land, and from your relatives, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. And I will produce of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name magnified, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless them that bless you, and curse him who curses you, and in you shall all families of the entire inhabited earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as YHWH had spoken to him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. Abram took Sarai his woman, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions they had gathered with the people they had acquired in Haran, and they departed for the land of Canaan, and to the land of Canaan they arrived. Then Abram traversed the land to the region of Sichem, to the plain of Moreh. The Canaanite then occupied the land. YHWH appeared to Abram, and spoke, saying, To your offspring will I give this land, and there he built an altar to YHWH, who appeared to him. Then he proceeded on towards a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, and Hai on the east, and there he built another altar to YHWH, and called upon the name of YHWH. After that Abram set out, and continued on towards the south. And there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to live there, because the famine was very oppressive in the land. Then it came about that when he was close to entering Egypt, that he said to Sarai his woman, Look here, I know that you are a beautiful woman to look at. And when the Egyptians shall see you, then they will say, This is his woman, and they will kill me, but they will save you alive. Speak, I urge you to be my sister, for the purpose that it may go well with me and you, for my life shall remain alive because of you. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman that she was very beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh saw her, praising her before Pharaoh, and she was taken to Pharaoh's house. And he treated Abram well because of her, and he had sheep, oxen, male and female donkeys, male and female slaves, and camels. But YHWH attacked Pharaoh and his house with intense disease, biological warfare, because of Sarai, Abram's woman. So Pharaoh summoned Abram, and asked, What have you done to me, and why did you not tell me she was your woman? Why did you say, She is my sister? I might have taken her to be my woman. Here then is your woman, take her and depart. Then Pharaoh gave orders to his men, saying, Send him and the woman away, with all that is his. So Abram left Egypt, he and his woman with all that he had, and Lot was with him, going to the region of southern Judah. Abram was very rich in cattle, silver, and gold, and he continued his journeys from the south, to Bethel, to the place where his tent had originally been, between Bethel and Hai. Traveling to the place of the altar, where he first made it, and there Abram called on the name of YHWH. Lot, who also went with Abram, had flocks, and herds, and tents. The land was not able to sustain them so they could stay together, for their possessions were exceeding, they simply could not live in the same place. Then there was a dispute between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. The Canaanite and the Perizzite also lived in the land. And Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no provocation between us, and between my herdsmen and yours, for we are brothers. The whole land is before you, right? I say let's part company, if you will take the left-handed way, then I will take the right-handed way, or if you turn to the right hand then I will turn left." Lot then raising his eyes, saw all the plain of the Jordan being irrigated everywhere, similar to the garden of Yhwh, like the land of Egypt toward Zoar. This was before Yhwh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Then Lot decided on all the plain of Jordan, and Lot departed eastward, and they separated themselves from one another. Abram remained in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent as far as Sodom. The men of Sodom however were bad and sinful before Yhwh exceedingly. Then Yhwh said to Abram, after Lot was separated from him, "Lift up your eyes now, and look from the place where you are northward, southward, eastward, and westward, for all the land you are seeing will I give to you, and to your offspring for the ages. And I will make your offspring as the earth dust, so that if a man can number the earth dust, then shall your offspring also be numbered. Stand up and walk through the land from the length to the breadth of it, for I will give it to you." Then Abram unpitched his tent, and came to live in the plain of Mamre, being in Hebron, and built there an altar to Yhwh. And it came about that in the days of Amraphel king of Shinar, Arioch king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer king of Elam, and Tidal king of Gentiles, that these kings made war with Bera king of Sodom, and with Bersha king of Gomorrah, Shinab king of Admah, and Shemeber king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. All these united together in the valley of the Siddim, which is the Dead Sea. They served Chedorlaomer 12 years, and in the 13th year they revolted. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer, with the kings that were with him, and struck the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, to El Paran, that is by the wilderness. Then they turned back, and came to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and struck all the country of the Amalekites, and the Amorites, that dwelled in Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, came and joined battle with those in the valley of the Siddim, with Chedorlaomer the king of Elam, and with Tidal king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. But the valley of the Siddim was full of marshes, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah drove hastily and fell into them, and they that survived escaped to the mountains. Then they seized all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their foodstuffs, and carried it away. And they captured Lot, Abram's brother's son, who lived in Sodom along with his possessions, and departed. A fugitive then came reporting these things to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram. When Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed 318 of his trained house slaves, from his own home, and pursued them to Dan. He divided his forces against them at night, himself and his house slaves killing them, and pursuing them to Hobah, located on the left side of Damascus. He returned all the possessions, and brought back his brother Lot, and his goods, with the women and kinsmen. After Abram returned from slaughtering Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. Then Melchizedek king of Salem brought out bread and wine, and he was the priest of the highest Elohim. And he blessed him, and spoke, saying, "Blessed be Abram of the highest Elohim, creator of the cosmos and earth. And blessed be the highest Elohim, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And he gave him tithes, 1/10 of all. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people and take the possessions for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have raised up my hand to Yhwh, the highest Elohim, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take even a thread of a sandal, and will not take anything that is yours, so that you cannot declare, I made Abram to become wealthy. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the portion that belongs to the man who went with me to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their portion." Later the word of Yhwh came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield and your exceedingly great reward." Then Abram replied, "Adonai Yhwh, what will you give me, seeing I have no children, and the one adopted servant of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" And Abram said, "To me you have given no offspring, so the slave born in my house will be my heir." Then the word of Yhwh came to him, speaking, "This one will not be your heir, but one shall come from your own inward parts, genetics or DNA, to be your heir." And he brought him outside, and declared, "Now look towards the cosmos, and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." And he believed in Yhwh, and that was reckoned to his account for righteousness. Then he spoke to him again, saying, "I am Yhwh that brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to entrust to you this land for your inheritance." And he replied, "Adonai Yhwh, how could I know that I will inherit this?" And he spoke to him, saying, "Take a 3-year-old heifer, and a goat and a ram, all of the same age, along with a dove and a young pigeon." So he took to himself all of these, and cut them in two, laying each half opposite each other, but the birds were not cut in two. And when the vultures descended on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. When sunset came, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and then a dreadfully great darkness fell on him. And he spoke to Abram, saying, Know that your offspring is a foreigner in a land not theirs, and they have served them, and they have afflicted them 400 years. And the nation, Egypt, whom they shall serve, I will judge, and later they will come out, the Exodus, with great possessions. And ye shall go to your fathers in peace, you will be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they will return again, for the depravity of the Amorites has not yet reached its completion. Then it came to pass at sunset, when it became dark, that a smoking fire pot, and a burning torch passed between those pieces. In that same day Yhwh made a covenant with Abram, saying, To your offspring have I given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, Kensites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaims, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Now Abram's woman Sarai engendered him no children, and she had an Egyptian handmaid whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Look now, Yhwh has withheld me from giving birth. Go now to my slave girl that you may obtain children by her. Then Abram listened to the declaration of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's woman, had acquired Hagar, her Egyptian slave girl, after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to Abram, her man, to be his woman. And he came upon Hagar, and she became pregnant, and when she saw her own pregnancy, she dishonored her mistress in her own eyes. View. Then Sarai said to Abram, Let my injustice be on your shoulders, I have permitted my maid into your intimacy. And when she saw that she had become pregnant, she despised me in her eyes. Yhwh judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, Look, your slave girl is in your power to do what makes you happy. So when Sarai mishandled her, she ran away from her occupation. Then the angel of Yhwh found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said to Hagar, Sarai's slave girl, Where have you come from and where are you going? And she replied, I am running away from the presence of my mistress Sarai. Then the angel of Yhwh said to her, Return to your mistress, and submit yourself under her authority. The angel of Yhwh also said to her, I will multiply your offspring exceedingly, that it cannot be numbered for its profusion. The angel of Yhwh said to her, Look, you are with child and will engender a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yhwh has heard your miseries. He will be an untamed donkey of a man, his power will oppose every man, and every man's hand will oppose him, and he will settle in the presence of all his relatives. And she called the name of Yhwh who spoke to her, the Elohim of vision, for she thought, I have openly seen him who has revealed to me. As a result the spring was named Beer Lahai Roi, it lies between Kadesh and Bered. Then Hagar engendered Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar delivered, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar engendered Ishmael to Abram. And when Abram was 99 years old, Yhwh appeared to Abram and spoke to him, saying, I am the Shaddai Elohim, walk before me, and find yourself complete. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and will greatly multiply your numbers. Then Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, Concerning my part, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. No longer will you be named Abram, but your new name will be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I ascribed you to be. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall go out from you. I will establish my covenant between us, and your offspring after you in their generations for an age-lasting covenant, being your Elohim and with your offspring that follow. I will give to you and to your offspring after you, this land where you are now a foreigner, all the land of Canaan, for an age-lasting possession, and will be their Elohim. Elohim spoke to Abraham, saying, You will observe my covenant, both you, and your offspring after you in their generations. This is my covenant that you shall observe between us and your offspring after you, every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it will be a sign of the covenant between us. And the infant that is 8 days old will be circumcised among you, every male in your generations, he that is born in your house, or purchased with money from any foreigner, who is not your offspring. He that is born in your house, and he that is purchased with your money, needs to be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an age-lasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that person shall be cut off from his people, for he has broken my covenant. Elohim said to Abraham, As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah will now be her name. I will bless her and give you a son from her, yes, I will bless and she shall be a mother of nations, kings of nations will flow from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughing, said in his heart, Shall a child be born to him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, engender children? Then Abraham said to Elohim, Oh that Ishmael might live and prosper before you. Elohim spoke, saying, Sarah your wife shall engender you a son for sure, and you will call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an age-lasting covenant, and with his offspring too. As for Ishmael, I have listened to you, look, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes will he engender, and I will make of him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall engender to you at this appointed time next year. So he finished talking with him, and Elohim withdrew from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were purchased with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in that same day, as Elohim had commanded him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. On the exact same day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael his son. And all the men of his house, born in his house, and those purchased from foreigners with his money, were circumcised with him. Yhwh appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the opening of the tent during the heat of the day. When he raised his eyes and looked, 3 men stood a short distance from him, and when he saw them he ran out to meet them from his tent's opening, and bowed himself towards the ground, and said, Adonai, Master, if I now have found acceptance in your sight, please do not alienate yourself from your slave, draw a little water to be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under this tree. I will get a piece of bread to sustain your hearts, and afterwards you shall leave, but now you have traveled to your slave. And they replied, Do as you have spoken. So Abraham hurried into his tent to Sarah, saying, Quickly make 3 quarts of fine flour, blend it and make pancakes. Then Abraham ran to the cattle and got a young animal, tender and good, and gave it to a young man and he hurried to prepare it. He took butter and milk with the calf that he had prepared, and presented it to them, and he stood next to them under the tree and they ate. Then they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he replied, See there, in the tent. Then he said, I will certainly return to you around this time next year and Sarah your woman will have a son. But Sarah was listening from inside the tent. Abraham and Sarah were old and well advanced in age and Sarah had gone through menopause. Sarah then laughed inside herself, saying, After I have gone through menopause, shall I have the delight of having children with my old husband? Yhwh said to Abraham, How come Sarah laughed, saying, Shall I indeed engender a child being old? Is anything too hard for Yhwh? At the set time I will return to you next year and Sarah will have a son. Sarah then denied it, claiming, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. But he replied, No, but you did laugh. Then the men got up and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to send them on their way. And Yhwh spoke, saying, Shall I conceal from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him? Because I know that he will command his children, and his descendants after him, and they will observe the way of Yhwh, to do justice and judgment, that Yhwh may bestow on Abraham the things he has spoken. Then Yhwh said, Because the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very burdensome, I will go down and inspect firsthand if they have done as their outcries have sounded, which has come to my knowledge. The men then turned away and traveled toward Sodom, but Abraham still remained in the presence of Yhwh. And Abraham approached close, and asked, Will you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? If there are 50 righteous within the city, will you destroy those 50 righteous that live there too? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked so that the righteous suffer as the wicked. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? Then Yhwh answered, If I find within Sodom 50 righteous, then everyone will be spared for their sake. Abraham said, Look now, I have taken upon me to speak to Adonai, I, who am composed of nothing but dust and ashes. What if the number is 5 less than 50, will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? And he replied, If I find there 45, I will not destroy it. Then he spoke to him again saying, What if there are 40? And he answered, I will not do it for those 40 people. And he said to him, Please let not Adonai be angry and I will speak, What if there are 30 people? And he answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Then he said, See now, I have presumed to speak again to Adonai, what if 20 are found there? And he replied, I will not destroy it for those 20 people. Again he said, Please be not angry Adonai, and I will speak only once more, what if only 10 are found there? And he answered, I will not destroy it for those 10 people. Then YHWH departed as soon as he had finished talking with Abraham, and Abraham returned home. Then 2 angels came to Sodom at sunset, and Lot was sitting in the public marketplace of the city, and when Lot saw them he stood up to meet them, bowing his face towards the ground. And he said, Look now my masters, please turn to your slave's house, and lodge the night, wash your feet, and you can get up early and continue your journey. And they replied, No thanks, but we will lodge in the open plaza for the night. But he urged them exceedingly, and they gave in to his wishes, entering his home. And he made a banquet for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they turned in for the night, the men of Sodom surrounded the house, both older men and young, all the people from every quarter. Then they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men that came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so we can have sex with them. But Lot went outside, closing the door behind him, and said, Please brothers, do not do such bad things. Look here, I have 2 daughters who are virgins, let me bring them out to you instead, and you can have them as pleases your lustful sight, only do nothing to these men for they pass under the protection of my roof. But they replied, Stand aside, repeating, This guy came here to live and he tries to dictate to us now? We will do worse to you, and with them. And they forcefully pushed Lot, and almost broke the door. But the men stretched out their hands, and brought Lot into the house with them, closing the door. Then they blighted the men at the door of the house with sudden blindness, both young and old, so that they tired themselves of trying to find the door. Then the men said to Lot, Is anyone else here besides yourself, such as son-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone belonging to you in this city? Bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the outcry of them has grown great before the presence of YHWH, and YHWH has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out, speaking to his sons-in-law, who married his daughters, and said, Get up and out of this place, because YHWH will destroy this city. But he seemed to them as one that jested to his in-laws. And when sunrise came the angels urged Lot, saying, Get up and take your woman and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you are consumed in the depravity of this city. Then while he hesitated, the men grabbed his hand, and the hand of his woman, and 2 daughters, YHWH being merciful to him, and they brought them out and placed them outside the city. And after they had brought them outside the city he spoke, saying, Escape for your lives, do not look behind you, nor stay here in the plain, escape to the mountains, lest you are destroyed. But Lot said to them, No, please my masters, look here, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have magnified your kindness, which you have showed to me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountains lest some other distress overtakes me and I die. See here that city which is closer to flee to, it is a smaller one, oh, let me escape there and I will survive. Then he replied to him, Okay, I support you in this matter also, I will not overthrow this city, which you have spoken about. Hurry, and escape to that place, for I cannot do anything until you have arrived there. The name of that city was called Zoar. It was sunrise in the land when Lot arrived at Zoar. Then YHWH rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire. From out of the skies it came from YHWH, and he overthrew those cities and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of those cities, and everything that grew upon the land. But his woman looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Abraham got up early at sunrise to the spot where he stood in the presence of YHWH, and he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and towards all the land of the plain viewing it, and the smoke of the land ascended up as the smoke of a kiln. So when Elohim destroyed the cities of the plain, then Elohim remembered Abraham, and sent Lot from the central vicinity of the overthrow, when he overturned those cities where Lot had lived. Then Lot left Zoar, living in the mountains with his 2 daughters because he was terrified to reside in Zoar, so he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. Then the firstborn said to the younger, Our dad is old, and there are no men in the land to possess us for offspring in the whole earth. Come, let us make our dad drunk with wine, and we will have sex with him so that we may sustain the offspring of our dad. And they made their dad drunk with wine that night, and the firstborn entered in and had sex with her dad, and he knew not when she laid down with him nor when she got up. Then the next day the firstborn said to the younger, See, I had sex last night with my dad, let us make him drunk again tonight too, and you go in and have sex with him, so that we may sustain the offspring of our dad. And they made their dad drunk with wine that night too, and the younger entered in, and had sex with him, and he knew not when she laid down with him nor when she got up. After this, both the daughters of Lot were pregnant by their dad. The firstborn engendered a son and called his name Moab, the same as the father of the Moabites to this day. Then the younger also engendered a son, and called his name Ben-Ammi, the same as the father of the children of Ammon to this day. Abraham journeyed from there to the region of southern Judah, and lived between Kadesh and Shur, and lodged for a while in Gerar. And Abraham was saying about Sarah his woman, She is my sister, and Abimelech king of Gerar sent for Sarah, and took her. Then Elohim came to Abimelech in a night dream and said to him, You are a dead man, because the woman you have taken is another man's woman. But Abimelech had not approached her, and he replied, Adonai, will you kill also a lawful people? Did not he say to me, She is my sister? And she also said, He is my brother, so that in the integrity of my heart and purity of my hands I took this action. And Elohim replied to him in a dream, Yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also restrained you from sinning against me. For this reason, I prevented you from touching her. Restore now to the man his woman, because he is a prophet, and he will pray for you and you shall live. And if you do not restore her, know that you will certainly die, you and all that are yours. Abimelech then rose early in the morning, and called all his slaves, and told all these things in their hearing, and the people were exceedingly fearful. Then Abimelech called Abraham, and said to him, What have you done to us? For you to have brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? You have done things to me that should not be done. Then Abimelech said to Abraham, Whatever was your reason for doing this? And Abraham replied, Because I was thinking the fear of Elohim is not in this region, and they will kill me on account of my woman. But truly she is my sister. She is the daughter of my dad, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my woman. Then when Elohim made me wander from my dad's house, I said to her, This is a favor you can show to me, and all the regions we will enter, tell them, He is my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen, and also male and female slaves, and gave them to Abraham, and returned to him Sarah his woman. And Abimelech said, My land is before you, so live wherever it pleases you. Then to Sarah he said, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver to make amends to all those with you. So the right thing has been completely done. So Abraham prayed to Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech, and his woman, and his female slaves, and they engendered children. For YHWH had made barren all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's woman. Then YHWH attended to Sarah as he had spoken, and YHWH produced for Sarah as he had promised. For Sarah became pregnant and engendered Abraham a son in his old age, at the appointed time that Elohim had declared. Abraham named his firstborn son Isaac, who Sarah had engendered. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him to do. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, Elohim has made me a laughingstock, so when all hear of this they will jest with me. And she said, Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would be nursing children, for I have engendered him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a large banquet the very day that Isaac was weaned. Then Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, that she had engendered to Abraham, mocking. She then said to Abraham, Drive out this female slave and her son, because the son of this female slave will not be heir with Isaac, my son. And her words were very disheartening in Abraham's eyes concerning his son. But Elohim said to Abraham, Let it not be disheartening in your eyes because of the boy, and because of your female slave. In all that Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Isaac will your offspring be named. And also for the son of the female slave I will make a nation, because he is your offspring too. So Abraham got up early at sunrise, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder with the boy, and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was consumed in the bottle, and she tossed the boy under one of the bushes. Then she walked on and sat down a little way off, about a bowshot, and said, Let me not see the death of the boy. And she sat a distance away, and raised her voice and was weeping bitterly. But Elohim heard the cry of the boy, and the angel of Elohim called to Hagar out of the skies, and spoke to her, saying, Hagar, do not be afraid, because Elohim has heard the crying of the boy where he is. Stand up, pick up the boy and hold him in your hand, for I will establish of him a great nation. Then Elohim opened her eyes, and she saw a spring of water, and she went and filled the water bottle, and gave the boy to drink. And Elohim was with the boy, and he grew and lived in the wilderness, and became an archer. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother obtained for him a woman from the land of Egypt. In that time Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spoke to Abraham saying, Elohim is with you in all that you do. Pledge now to me here by Elohim that you will not play tricks with me, or with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done for you, likewise do for me and those living in the lands where you have traveled. And Abraham replied, I will pledge. Then Abraham rebuked Abimelech, because of a spring of water that Abimelech's slaves had violently stolen. But Abimelech replied, I do not know who has done this, because you have not told me, and I have heard nothing about it except now. Then Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and both of them carved out a treaty. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs out from the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said to Abraham, These 7 ewe lambs which you have set out separately, what is the meaning of this? And he replied, For these 7 ewe lambs that you will take of my hand, will be a witness to me that I have dug this well. Then he called that place Beersheba, because there they pledged together and made a treaty at Beersheba. Then Abimelech got up, along with Phicol, the chief captain of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and called on the name of YHWH, the age-lasting Elohim. And Abraham lived in the Philistines' land many days. Then after these things Elohim tested Abraham, and called to him, saying, Abraham, and he replied, Here I am. And he spoke, saying, Now take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and depart for the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will show you. So Abraham got up at sunrise and saddled his donkey, and took 2 young men with him, along with Isaac his son. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and went to the place that Elohim had spoken of. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the location in the distance. Then Abraham said to his slaves, Stay here with the donkey, and the boy and I will go over there to worship, and then we'll return to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering, and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand, with a knife, and they went out together. Then Isaac spoke to Abraham his dad, saying, My father. And he replied, Here I am, my son. And he asked, How come the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham replied, My son, Elohim will himself provide a lamb for a burnt offering. So they continued on together. And they came to the place that Elohim had shown him, and Abraham built an altar, laying the wood in order, then bound Isaac his son and placed him on the altar top with wood. Then Abraham stretched out his hand, taking the knife, to slaughter his son. But the angel of YHWH called to him from the skies, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he replied, Here I am. And he commanded, Lay not your hand on the boy, do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear Elohim, seeing you have not spared your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham raised up his eyes and looked, and behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns, and Abraham went and took the ram, and offered it up for a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place, YHWH, as it is told about to this day, in the mountain YHWH will be seen. Then the angel of YHWH called to Abraham out of the skies a 2nd time, and said, By myself have I adjured, declares YHWH, for because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your offspring as the stars of the cosmos, and as the sand on the seashore. And your offspring will possess the gate of their enemies. In your offspring will all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his slaves, and they got up and departed together to Beersheba, and Abraham resided at Beersheba. Later it was told to Abraham, that Milcah has also engendered children to your brother Nahor, Huz his firstborn, Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Chest, Hazo, Pildash, Jedloth, Betuel. Then Betuel engendered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah engendered to Nahor, Abraham's brother. And his concubine, named Reumah, also had sons Tebah, Gaam, Thahash, and Makkah. Sarah was 127 years old, which was her lifespan, and Sarah died in Kirjath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came to mourn for Sarah, shedding tears for her. Then Abraham stood up from before his dead woman, and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a temporary resident and foreigner with you. Grant me some property for a grave plot with you so that I may bury my dead for my sight. Then the children of Heth answered Abraham, and said to him, Hear us, my master, you are a divine prince among us. Bury your dead in the best of our grave plots. None of us will prevent you from burying your dead in the grave plot of your choice. Then Abraham stood up, bowing himself to the people of the land, who were the sons of Heth, Hittites. And he talked with them, saying, If it is favorable to let me bury my dead from my sight, please intercede for me to Ephron the son of Zohar, that he may sell to me the cave of Machpelah, located at the end of his field, for as much money as it is worth. He can sell it to me for the property of a grave plot among you. And Ephron lived among the children of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, who had come to the city gate, saying, No, my master, listen to me, I give you this field with the cave that is there, I bestow it to you in the presence of the sons of my people, so go and bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land, and he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the local residents, saying, But if you will give it to me, hear this. I will give you money for the field, so please take it and I will bury my dead there. Then Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My master, listen to me, the land is worth 400 shekels of silver, so what is that between you and me? Go now and bury your dead. Then Abraham summoned Ephron, and Abraham weighed to Ephron the silver that he had declared in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, which was the current monetary rate. So the field of Ephron that was in Machpelah, which was near Mamre, the field including the cave, plus all the trees that were in the field bordering it, were legally deeded. This was deeded to Abraham as his property, in the presence of the children of Heth, before all that entered the city gate. Abraham then buried Sarah his wife in the cave at the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, the same as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and cave located there were legally established for Abraham as a graveyard by the sons of Heth. Now Abraham was old and well advanced in age, and YHWH had blessed Abraham in all things. Then Abraham said to his eldest slave in his household, the one that ruled over all that he had, Put your hand under my thigh. I will make you pledge by YHWH, the Elohim of the cosmos, and Elohim of the land, that you shall not take a woman for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I reside. But you will go to my land, seeking my offspring, and acquire a woman for my son Isaac. Then the slave said to him, What if the woman is not willing to follow me to this land? Shall I then have to take your son back to the land you came from? And Abraham replied to him, Be careful you do not bring my son back to that land. YHWH Elohim of the cosmos, who took me from my father's house, and from the land of my offspring, spoke to me and pledged to me, saying, To your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will acquire a woman for my son from there. But if the woman will not give consent to follow you, then you will be free from this oath, only do not take my son back there. Then the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and pledged to him concerning the matter. And the slave took 10 of his master's camels and departed, for all the good gifts of his master were in his hand, and he got up and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. Then he made his camels to kneel down outside the city by a spring of water at sunset, the time when women go out to draw water. And he prayed, O YHWH Elohim of my master Abraham, I pray to you, send me the encounter I shall meet this day, and show kindness to my master Abraham. I stand here by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I will say, Let down your pitcher that I may drink, and she replies, Drink, and I will give your camels drink too, let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac. Then I will know that you have shown virtue to my master. Then before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out, who was engendered by Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother. She came with her water jar on her shoulder. And the young woman was very beautiful to gaze at, a virgin that no man had had sex with. So down she stepped to the spring, filling her water jar, but as she came up, the servant ran to meet her, saying, Let me drink a little water from your pitcher. And she replied, Drink my master, and she hurried and let down her water jar with her hands, and gave him a drink. Then when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels too, until they finish drinking. So she hurried and emptied her water jar into the watering trough, and ran to the spring a second time, to draw water for all his camels. And the man observing her was silent, considering whether YHWH had made his journey prosperous or not. Once the camels had finished drinking, then the man took out a golden earring of half a shekel weight, and 2 hand bracelets of 10 shekels weight of gold, and he asked, Whose daughter are you? Tell me if there is room in your dad's house for us to lodge tonight? And she replied to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel the son of Milcah, whom she engendered to Nahor. She also said to him, We have both straw and feed in abundance, and room for lodging. Then the man bowed down his head and worshipped YHWH. And he said, Blessed be YHWH Elohim of my master Abraham, who has not neglected his kindness and faithfulness. Yet as for myself, YHWH led me to the house of my master's relatives. Then the young woman ran and reported to her mother's house these words. Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he ran out to the man at the spring. When he saw the earring and bracelets on his sister's hands, and when he heard the words that the man had spoken to his sister, then he went to the man who was standing with the camels at the spring. And he said, "Come in, you who are blessed of YHWH, why stand outside, since I have prepared the house and a stall for the camels?" So the man came to the house, and he untied his camels, giving them straw and feed, plus water for washing his feet, and for the men with him too. Then there was set food before him to eat, but he said, "I will not eat until I have spoken my business." So he replied, "Go ahead and speak." And he answered, "I am Abraham's slave. YHWH has blessed my master greatly, and he has become powerful, and has been given flocks, herds, silver, gold, male and female slaves, camels, and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's woman, engendered a son to my master in her old age, and to him has his estate been assigned. And my master made me pledge, saying, You shall not take a woman to my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose lands I reside, but you shall go to my father's house, and to my own clan, and acquire a woman for my son." Then I said to my master, "What if the woman will not follow me?" And he replied to me, YHWH, in whose presence I walk, will send his angel with you and prosper your way, and you will acquire a woman for my son from my clan, and of my father's descendants. Then you will be free from this oath of mine, when you come to my clan, and if they do not give you a woman, you will be freed from the pledge. Then I came today to this spring, and prayed, YHWH Elohim of my master Abraham, if now you will prosper the way which I go, I now stand by this spring of water, and, may it come to pass that when the virgin comes here to draw water, I will say to her, Let down your pitcher that I may drink. And she replies, Drink yourself and I will give your camels drink too. Let this same woman be the one who YHWH has appointed for my master's son. And before I had finished praying this in my mind, Rebekah came forward with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, Let me drink, please. And she hurried, and let down her water jar from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I will give your camels drink too. So I drank and she watered the camels too. Then I asked her saying, Whose daughter are you? She then replied, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah engendered to him. And I put the earring on her face and the bracelets on her hands. Then I bowed down my head and worshipped YHWH, and blessed YHWH Elohim of my master Abraham, that had led me in the divinely instructed journey to acquire my master's brother's daughter for his son. So now if you will deal kindly and faithfully with my master, inform me one way or the other that I may turn to the right hand, or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, and said, These words come from YHWH, so we cannot speak to you this way or that. Rebekah is in your presence, so take her and go, and let her be your master's son's woman, as YHWH has spoken. When Abraham's slave heard their words, he worshipped YHWH, bowing himself to the ground. Then the slave brought out objects of silver, gold, and garments, giving them to Rebekah. He gave to her brother and to her mother costly presents also. Then they did eat and drink, he and the men with him, and lodged the night, and he got up at sunrise and he said, Now send me away to my master. But her brother and her mother replied, Let the young woman stay with us at least 10 days and then she can go. But he replied to them, Do not delay me, seeing YHWH has prospered my way, send me away now that I may go to my master. Then they replied, We will call the young woman and ask her to speak. So they called Rebekah, and asked her, Will you go with this man? And she replied, I will go. So they sent away Rebekah their sister, and her nurse, with Abraham's slave and his men. And they blessed Rebekah, saying to her, You are our sister, so become the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and let your offspring dispossess the gate of the hating enemy. Then Rebekah got up with her female slave, and they rode by camel and followed the man, and the slave took Rebekah and departed on his way. Meanwhile Isaac had come from Lahai-roi, for he lived in southern Judah. Then Isaac came out to ponder things in the field at sunset, and he looked up and saw the camels were coming. And Rebekah with longing desire looked, and when she saw Isaac, she got off the camel. For she had said to the slave, Who is that man walking in the field to meet us? And the slave replied, It was the master. Then she took a veil, and concealed herself. Then the slave recounted to Isaac all the business that he had done. And Isaac brought her to his mother Sarah's tent, and he acquired Rebekah, and she became his woman, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted following the death of his mother. Then Abraham took another woman, and her name was Keturah. And she engendered him Zimron, Jikshan, Madon, Midian, Eshbach, Shua. And Jikshan engendered Sheba, and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letushim, and Laamim. The sons of Midian, Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, Eldaah. All these were the children of Keturah. Then Abraham assigned all of his property to Isaac. But to the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son while he still lived, to the land of the east. The lifespan of Abraham that he lived was 175 years. Then Abraham expired and died in good old age, very satisfied, and was brought to his kinsmen for burial. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the son of Zohar, which lies east of Mamre. The field that Abraham purchased from the sons of Heth, there Abraham was buried, and Sarah his woman. Then after the death of Abraham, Elohim blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac resided by the spring Lahai-roi. Now this is the genealogy of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's female slave, engendered to Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names, according to their genealogies: the firstborn of Ishmael, Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Dumah, Massa, Hadar, Tema, Jadur, Nephish, Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, by their towns, and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their tribes. The lifetime of Ishmael was 137 years, he expired and died, and was brought to his kinsmen for burial. And they lived from Havilah to Shur, near Egypt, as you go towards Assyria, and he died in the presence of all his relatives. And this is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham engendered Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he acquired Rebekah to be his woman, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Paddan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac prayed to Yhwh for his woman, because she was sterile, and Yhwh heard his prayers, and Rebekah his woman became pregnant. And the children struggled inside her womb, and she said, "Why do these conditions prevail?" And she went to consult Yhwh. Then Yhwh spoke, saying, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people will be separated from your womb, one people over the other will be stronger, and the strongest one will serve the younger. Then the time of birth came, and there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red-looking, and his body looked like a hairy garment, so they called his name Esau. Then the brother came out, and his hand grabbed onto Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob, the heel holder, and Isaac was 60 years old when she engendered them. Then the boys grew, and Esau became an experienced hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob developed as a homely man, living in tents. Isaac was fond of Esau, because he ate his hunted game, but Rebekah was fond of Jacob. One day Jacob was boiling food when Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted, so Esau said to Jacob, "Let me devour some of those red lentils, for I am now exhausted." That is why he is also called Edom. But Jacob replied, "Sell me this day your birthright." And Esau replied, "I could almost die, so what profit will this birthright do for me?" Jacob then answered, "Pledge it to me this day." And he pledged to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread with the boiled lentils that he ate, and then got up after drinking and left. Esau had scorned his birthright as a result of this. And there was a second famine in the land, after the first famine in the days of Abraham. Then Isaac went to Abimelech king of the Philistines in Gerar. Yhwh appeared to him speaking, "Do not go down to Egypt but reside rather in the land that I shall tell you of. Remain for a time in this land and I will be with you, blessing you, because for you and your offspring, I will bestow all these lands and I will perform the oath that I adjured to Abraham your dad. I will make your offspring numerous as the stars of the cosmos, and will give to your offspring all these lands, and in your offspring will all the nations of the whole earth be blessed, because Abraham had obeyed my voice and observed my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." Now Isaac resided in Gerar, and the men of the region asked him about his woman, and he replied, "She's my sister." He was afraid to say, "She's my woman," because the men of the region might kill him because Rebekah was so beautiful to behold. So after a long time had passed, Abimelech king of the Philistines looked out a window and saw Isaac frolicking with Rebekah his woman. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, "It is a fact that she is your woman, so how come you said, 'She is my sister'?" And Isaac replied to him, "Because I thought I would be killed because of her." Abimelech then answered, "What have you done to us? One of the people might have had sexual relations with your woman, and you would have brought offenses on us." Then Abimelech commanded all his people, proclaiming that anyone who touches this man or his woman will certainly be put to death. Later Isaac planted seed in the land, and reaped that same year 100-fold because Yhwh blessed him. And the man grew powerful and his power increased until he became very wealthy. Because he had flocks, herds and many slaves, so that the Philistines became jealous of him. For all the springs that his dad's slaves had excavated in the days of Abraham, his dad, the Philistines had blocked up and filled with dirt. Then Abimelech said to Isaac, "Leave us, for you are much more numerous than ourselves." So Isaac then left and encamped in the valley of Gerar, and resided there. And Isaac excavated again the springs of water that were dug in the days of Abraham his dad, because the Philistines had blocked them up after the death of Abraham, and he named them after the names his dad had called them. Then Isaac's slaves excavated in the valley and found there a spring of fresh flowing water. But the shepherds of Gerar feuded with Isaac's shepherds, saying, "This water is ours," and he called the name of the spring Esek, because they feuded with him. And they excavated another spring and feuded for that also, and he called the name of it Sitnah. So he advanced on from there and excavated another spring, and they did not feud with him, so he called the name of it Rehoboth and said, "For now YHWH has made room for us and we shall branch off in this land." Then he went up to Beersheba, and YHWH appeared to him that same night and spoke, "I am the Elohim of Abraham your dad. Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will bless you, and multiply your offspring for my slave Abraham's sake." He then built an altar and called on the name of YHWH, and pitched his tent there, and his slaves excavated a spring there too. Then Abimelech came to him from Gerar, and Ahuzzath one of his confidential friends, and Phicol the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing you hate me, and have sent me away?" And they replied, "We see and consider how YHWH spoke with you, and we thought, there should be an oath between us, among us and you, so may we now make a treaty with you? So that you will not harm us, as we have not struck you, and as we did nothing but good, and have sent you away in safety. Now you are the blessed of YHWH. Then he made them a banquet, and they did eat and drink. And they got up at sunrise and made the oath among themselves, and Isaac sent them away, and they left him in peace. Then it came to pass that Isaac's slaves came and told him concerning the spring that they had excavated, and said to him, "We have found water." And he called it Shabah, so the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. Esau was 40 years old when he acquired 2 women, Judith the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemath the daughter of Elon the Hittite. This became a grieving of mind to both Isaac and Rebekah. Then when Isaac was old and his eyesight had faded so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son and said to him, "My son," and he replied to him, "Here I am." Then he said, "Look now, I am old and I have no idea when my day of death will come. Go get your hunting gear, your bow and arrows, and go out to the field and hunt me some game. Prepare for me your tasty food such as I love and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my life may give you a blessing before I die." Now Rebekah heard when Isaac spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went out into the field to hunt for game and to bring it home. Then Rebekah spoke to Jacob her son saying, "I heard your dad speak to Esau your brother saying, 'Bring me game and make me your tasty food so that I may eat, and bless you in the presence of YHWH before my death. My son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go now to the flock and get me 2 good young male goats from among the female goats, and I will prepare the tasty food for your dad such as he enjoys. Then you will bring it to your dad so he may eat, and that he may bless you before his death.'" But Jacob replied to Rebekah his mother, "Look, Esau my brother is a hairy-skinned man and I am a smooth-skinned man. My dad will feel my skin and I will be a deceiver to him, and I will bring a curse upon myself rather than a blessing." But his mother replied to him, "Let the curse be on me, my son, only obey my voice and go get me the 2 goats. So he went and got the 2 goats, bringing them to his mother, and his mother made the tasty food that his dad enjoyed. Then Rebekah took quality clothing from her eldest son Esau, which she found in the house, and put them on Jacob her younger son. And she put the skins of young goats upon his hands and over the smooth skin of his neck. She then gave the tasty food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hands of Jacob her son. Then he came to his dad and said, "Dad," and he replied, "Here I am. So which one of my sons are you?" Jacob answered his dad, "I am Esau your firstborn, and I have done according as you have commanded me. Get up, sit and eat of my game so that your life does bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How come you have found it so fast, my son?" And he replied, "Because YHWH alone brought it to me." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so that I may feel you, my son, whether you are my son Esau or not." And Jacob went near to Isaac his dad, and he felt him, and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy, as his brother Esau's hands were, so he blessed him. Then he said, "Are you my son Esau?" And he replied, "I am." And he said, "Bring that food here and I will eat of my son's game, that by my life your blessing will come." So he brought it close to him and he ate, and he brought him wine and he drank. Then his dad Isaac said to him, "Come close now and hug me, my son." So he came close and hugged him, and he smelled the smell of his clothing and blessed him, and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that YHWH has blessed. Let Elohim give you of the dew of the skies, and the fertile places of the land, and an abundance of wheat, cereal, grain, corn and wine. Let nations serve you and people bow down to you, be ruler over your brother and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be every one that curses you and blessed be those that bless you. When Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, he had just left the presence of Isaac his dad, when Esau his brother came in from hunting. And he also had made tasty food and brought it to his dad, and said to his dad, Let my dad get up and eat of his son's game, so that your life does bless me. But Isaac his dad replied to him, Who are you? And he replied, I am your son, your firstborn Esau. Then Isaac shook very greatly, and said, Who? Where is he that has taken the game and brought it to me, and I have eaten of all this before you came, and have blessed him? Yes indeed, he is the one that will be blessed. When Esau heard the words of his dad, he cried with a great and mighty cry of bitterness, and said to his dad, Bless me, even me also, O my dad. And he replied, Your brother came with deceit and has taken away your blessing. Then he answered, Is not he rightly named Jacob? Because he has circumvented me these 2 times, he took away my birthright and now he has taken away my blessing. And he said, Have not you reserved a blessing for me too? Isaac answered and said to Esau, I have made him your ruler, and all his brothers have I given to him for slaves, and with corn and wine have I refreshed him, and what will I do now for you my son? And Esau replied to his dad, Have you but one blessing my father? Bless me, even me too, my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his dad answered, Your seat will be before richly prepared food from the land and from the skies above. By your sword will you live and will serve your brother, but when you become restless you will throw his slavery from off your neck. Then Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing that his dad blessed him with, and Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my dad are close approaching, and then I will slay my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau her elder son were made known to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob her younger son and said to him, Your brother Esau, as touching you, comforts himself in the thought of killing you. Now my son, obey my voice and get up and run away to Laban my brother in Haran, and stay with him a number of days until your brother's rage goes away. Until the time your brother's anger passes from you and he forgets what was done to him, then I will send for you from there. Why should I be made childless of the both of you in one day? Rebekah then said to Isaac, I am grieved of living because of the daughters of Heth, and if Jacob takes a woman from the daughters of Heth, like the daughters in this land, what good shall my life be to me? Isaac called Jacob, blessing him, and charged him with the command, You will not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan. Get up and go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethuel your mother's dad, and acquire yourself a woman from that region, from the daughters of Laban your mother's brother. And El Shaddai bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be a company of nations, passing the blessings of Abraham to you and your offspring. Then you may dispossess the land where you are a wayfarer that Elohim gave to Abraham. Then Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Paddan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. When Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob, and sent him away to Paddan Aram, to acquire himself a woman from that region, and that he blessed him, giving him a command saying, You will not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan. And that Jacob obeyed his dad and his mother, and departed to Paddan Aram. Then Esau considered how the daughters of Canaan displeased Isaac his dad. Esau then went to Ishmael, and acquired, in addition to the women he had, Mahalath the daughter of Ishmael Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth, to be his woman. Meanwhile Jacob proceeded from Beersheba, traveling towards Haran, and he reached a particular region and stayed there all night because it was sunset, and he took the stones of that region and laid one as a headrest, then lodged there to sleep. And he dreamed that a ladder stood upright on the land, and the top of it reached to the cosmos, and the angels of Elohim went up and came down on it. YHWH stood above it and spoke, I am YHWH Elohim of Abraham your father, and the Elohim of Isaac. The land where you are lodging will be given to you and to your offspring. And your offspring will be as the dust of the land, and you will spread abroad to the west, east, north, and to the south, and in you and in your offspring will all the families of the earth be blessed. I will guard you in all places where you go, and will return you to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done for you what I have spoken. Jacob then woke up from sleeping and said, Truly YHWH was standing here and I did not know it. Then he was afraid and said, How honored is this standing place? This is none other but the house of Elohim, and this is the star gate of the cosmos. Jacob got up at sunrise and took the stone that he had put for his headrest, and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. And he called the name of that standing place Bethel, but the name of that city was first called Luz. And Jacob affirmed a pledge saying, If Elohim will be with me and will guard me in this journey that I go, and will grant me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I return to my dad's house in peace, then will Yhwh be my Elohim. And this stone pillar that I have set for a pillar will be Elohim's house, and of all that you will bestow to me I will take a 10th part for an offering as a tithe to you. Then Jacob continued on his journey, and came to the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and saw a spring in the field, and there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it, for out of that spring they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's opening. And when all the flocks gathered they would roll away the stone from the well's opening and water the sheep, and put the stone back on the well's opening where it fitted. Then Jacob asked them, My kinsmen, where are you from? And they replied that they were from Haran. And he asked them, Do you know Laban the son of Nahor? And they answered, We know him. Then he asked, Is he well? And they replied, He is well, and look, here comes Rachel his daughter with the sheep. And he said, The sun is high in the sky, and it is not time to round up the cattle, so water your sheep, and take them back, out to pasture. But they replied, We cannot until all the flocks are rounded up together, and until they roll the stone from the well's opening, then we can water the sheep. Now while he still spoke with them, Rachel came with her dad's sheep, because she tended them. When Jacob saw Rachel the daughter of Laban his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban his mother's brother, then Jacob went over there and rolled the stone from the well's opening, and watered the flock of Laban his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel, and raised his voice and shed tears. Then Jacob made known to Rachel he was her dad's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran away and told her dad. When Laban heard the news about Jacob his sister's son, he ran out to meet him, embracing and hugging him, and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. Then Laban said to him, Certainly you are my flesh and bone kinsman. And he stayed with him for the period of a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my brother you should not work for me for nothing? Tell me, what will your wages be? And Laban had 2 daughters, the name of the elder was Leah and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had anemic-looking eyes, but Rachel was the most beautiful with a well-figured appearance. And Jacob loved Rachel and answered, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel your younger daughter. Then Laban replied, It is better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man, so remain here with me. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had to her. And Jacob said to Laban, Give me my woman, for my days are accomplished that I may sexually possess her. Then Laban gathered together all the men of the region and made a banquet. Then at sunset, he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he possessed her sexually. And Laban gave to his daughter Leah, Zilpah his slave girl, for a female slave. Then at sunrise he looked, and it was Leah, and he said to Laban, What is this you have done to me? Did I not work with you for Rachel? How come you deceived me? But Laban replied to him, It is not the custom in our region to give the younger before the firstborn. Finish Leah's bridal week and we will give you Rachel too, for an additional 7 years of your labor. Jacob did so and finished her bridal week, and he gave him Rachel his daughter to marry also. Then Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, Bilhah his slave girl, to be her female slave. And he sexually possessed Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah and worked with him for another 7 years. And when Yhwh saw that Leah was hated he opened her womb, but Rachel remained sterile. And Leah became pregnant and gendered a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, Certainly Yhwh has looked on my misery, so now will my husband show me love. Then she became pregnant again and gendered a son and said, Because Yhwh has heard that I was hated he has therefore given me this son also, and she called his name Simeon. And she became pregnant again and gendered a son and said, Now this time will my husband make love with me, because I have gendered him 3 sons, therefore was his name called Levi. And she became pregnant again and gendered a son, and she said, Now will I praise Yhwh, so she called his name Judah, and ceased bearing children. When Rachel saw that she gendered Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, I cannot live unless I have children. Then Jacob's nostrils flared and he became furious against Rachel, and he said, Am I in the place of Elohim who has denied from you the offspring of the womb? And she replied, Take my maid Bilhah, make love to her, and she will gender offspring so that I may also have children through her. Then she gave Bilhah her female slave to him for his woman, and Jacob slept with her. And Bilhah became pregnant and gendered Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, Elohim has vindicated me and has also heard my voice, and has given me a son, therefore she called his name Dan. And Bilhah Rachel's female slave became pregnant again, and gendered Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, With great contentions have I grappled with my sister, and I have prevailed, and she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped giving birth, she took Zilpah her female slave and gave her to Jacob for his woman. And Zilpah Leah's female slave gendered Jacob a son. Then Leah said, A good fortune comes, and she called his name Gad. And Zilpah Leah's maid gendered Jacob a second son. And Leah said, I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed, and she called his name Asher. Then Reuben during the wheat harvest had found in the field mandrakes that excite sexual desire, and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel asked Leah, Give me of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, Is not taking my husband enough for you? And would you take away my son's mandrakes too? And Rachel replied, Okay, he will sleep with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. And Jacob came from the field at sunset, and Leah went out to meet him and said, You must come in to me because I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he made love with her that night. And Elohim listened to Leah, and she became pregnant, and gendered Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, Elohim has given me my hire because I have given my slave girl to my husband, and she called his name Issachar. And Leah became pregnant again, and gendered Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, Elohim has bestowed on me a good gift, now will my husband live with me because I have brought forth to him 6 sons, and she called his name Zebulun. Later she gendered a daughter, and called her name Dinah. Then Elohim remembered Rachel, and Elohim listened to her and opened her womb. And she became pregnant, and gendered a son and said, Elohim has taken away my taunting. She called his name Joseph, and said, YHWH will add to me another son. After Rachel had gendered Joseph, then Jacob said to Laban, Send me away, so that I may go to my own region and to my own land. Give me my women and my children for whom I have worked for you to acquire, and let me go, because you have witnessed my labors that I have accomplished. Then Laban replied to him, If I have found acceptance in your eyes, I have divined that YHWH has blessed me because of you. So he said, Specify to me your wages and I will give it to you. And he replied to him, You know how I have labored for you and how your livestock was in my care. You had little before I came, and it has now increased greatly, plus YHWH has blessed you since my coming. But now, when will I be tending to my own house? And he answered, What will I give you? And Jacob replied, Do not give me anything except do this one thing for me, I will return to feed and guard your flocks. Then let me pass through all your flocks today, removing from all of them the speckled and spotted flocks, and all the brown sheep among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled from among the goats, and this will comprise my wages. So will my righteousness testify for me in the future, whenever you personally verify my wages, everyone then that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, or brown among the sheep, you will count those stolen by me. Then Laban answered, Let it be as you have said. So he removed that day the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, also every one that had some white on it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them to the hand of his sons. Then he set 3 days' worth of travel between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flocks. And Jacob took branches from fresh white poplar trees, and also the almond and plane tree, and peeled the bark back to expose the peeled white, and made the white exposed on the branches. Then he put the branches that he had peeled before the flocks in their watering trough when the flocks came for water. That made them come into heat when they came to drink. And the flocks came into heat before the branches and gendered streaked, speckled, and spotted flocks. So Jacob divided the lambs, and placed the faces of the flock towards the streaked, also all the brown of Laban's flock, and he placed his own herds by themselves, but did not put them near Laban's flock. Then whenever the stronger flocks came into heat, then Jacob laid the branches near the side of the herds near their trough, which caused them to come into heat next to these branches. But he did not do this with the weaker flocks, so that the weaker were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the womb burst open exceedingly for the man, and he had many flocks, and male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. He also heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our dad's, and he has produced all these riches from what belonged to our dad. Then Jacob saw the looks of Laban that they were not the same as in the past. And YHWH said to Jacob, Return to the land of your forefathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah from the field where his flocks were, and said to them, I see your dad's looks that they are different now from what they were in the past, but Elohim of my father has been with me. And you know that with all my human strength I have labored for your dad. And your dad has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but Elohim has not permitted him to hurt me. If he said, The speckled will be your wages, then all the flocks gendered speckled, and if he said, The streaked will be your wages, then all the flocks were gendered streaked. Thus Elohim has taken away the flocks of your dad, and has given them to me. Then the flocks again conceived, and I raised my eyes, and saw in a dream that the male goats that leapt on the goats were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then the angel of Elohim spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I replied, Here I am. And he said, Lift up now your eyes, and look at all the male goats that leap upon the goats that are streaked, speckled, and spotted, because I have seen all that Laban does to you. I am the Elohim of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you pledged the votive offering to me, now get up and leave this land, and return to the land of your relatives." Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, "Is there any share or inheritance left for us in our dad's house? Are we regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and then gone on to devour our silver. For all the riches that Elohim has taken from our dad, belongs to us and our children, so whatever Elohim has said to you, do." Then Jacob got up, and lifted up his sons, and his women putting them on camels. And he drove on all his livestock, and taking all his possessions that he had amassed, his acquired cattle, which he had collected in Paddan Aram, and departed for Isaac his dad in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, but Rachel had stolen the teraphim that belonged to her dad. And Jacob secretly left Laban the Syrian, not telling him of his escape. So he ran away with all that he had, getting up and crossing over the river, then set his sights towards Mount Gilead. Now Laban was told on the third day that Jacob had run away. And he took his relatives with him, and pursued after him traveling 7 days, and they overtook him at Mount Gilead. But Elohim came to Laban the Syrian in a night dream and said to him, "Guard yourself that you speak to Jacob nothing either good or bad." Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his relatives pitched in the Mount of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done sneaking away secretly from me, and carrying my daughters away like captives taken with the sword? Why did you run away secretly and steal away from me, not telling me, so that I might have sent you away with gladness and singing, with tambourine and with lyre? I did not even have a chance to kiss my grandsons and daughters? You have acted foolishly in doing this. I have the power in my hand to injure you, but the Elohim of your fathers spoke to me last night commanding, 'Guard yourself that you speak to Jacob nothing either good or bad.' And now, you have certainly left because you have been longing for the home of your dad, but why have you stolen my Elohim?" Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid when I thought perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force. But regarding your Elohim, if any one of us has them, let him be put to death. Make a search here in our presence now for what is yours, and take it." Because Jacob had no knowledge that Rachel had taken them. Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, then into the 2 female slaves' tents, but found nothing. Then he left Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the teraphim and put them with the camel's furniture and sat on them. But Laban searched the whole tent but found nothing. And she said to her dad, "Please do not get mad, my master, that I cannot get up before you, for I am having my period." So he searched, but did not find the teraphim. Then Jacob was angry and quarreled with Laban, and Jacob shouted to Laban saying, "Where is my offense and what is my sin for you to have pursued after me in this blaze? Now that you have searched all my stuff, what have you found of all your household objects? Place it here before my relatives and your relatives so that they may judge between the both of us. For 20 years now I have been with you, your sheep and she-goats have not miscarried, neither the rams of your flock did I consume. The dashed I have not brought to you, I suffered the loss, from my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. In my situation I was consumed by heat and cold, and was sleepless. For 20 years in your house I served you, 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you have changed my wages 10 times. Unless the Elohim of my father, the Elohim of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, you would have sent me away destitute, but my affliction and labor of my hands Elohim did see, and he rebuked you last night." Then Laban replied and said to Jacob, "These daughters are my daughters and these children are my children, and these flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. So what can I do today for my daughters, or to their children that they have gendered? Let us now carve out for ourselves a pledge, you and me, and let it be for a witness between us." So Jacob took a stone, and set it up for a pillar. Then Jacob said to his relatives, "Gather stones," and they took stones, and made a mound, and they ate a meal there on the mound. And Laban named it Jegar-Sahadutha, witness mound in Chaldea, but Jacob named it Gilead, witness mound in Hebrew. Then Laban said, "This mound is a witness between us this day." Therefore was the name of it called Gilead. And Mizpah, watchtower, for he said, "YHWH watch between us when we are absent from one another. If you shall mishandle my daughters, or if you will take other women beside my daughters, when no one is present, then Elohim is witness between us." And Laban said to Jacob, "Take note of this mound and mark this pillar that I have laid between us. Let this mound be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not cross over this mound to you, and that you will not cross over this mound and pillar to me, for harm. Let the Elohim of Abraham and Nahor, the Elohim of their father, judge between us." Then Jacob pledged by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice on the mount and called his relatives to eat bread, and they ate bread and stayed all night in the mount. Then at sunrise Laban got up, and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them, and Laban departed and returned to his region. Jacob continued on his way, and the angel of Elohim encountered him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is an encampment of divine ones, Elohim," and he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent representatives in advance of himself to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "You will speak this to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob declares, I have lived with Laban and have stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, and flocks, in addition to male and female slaves, and I have sent an announcement to my master hoping to secure favor in your eyes." But the representatives returned to Jacob saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he now comes to meet you with 400 men. Then Jacob was greatly terrified and distressed, and he divided the people with him and the flocks, herds, and camels into 2 encampments. And said, "If Esau invades one camp, and attacks it, then the other camp which is left shall escape." Then Jacob cried, "O Elohim of my father Abraham, and Elohim of my father Isaac, YHWH who spoke to me, return to your land and your kinsmen, and I will deal good with you. I am too insignificant for all your goodness and truth that you have showed to your slave, for with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become 2 camps. Rescue me from the hand of my brother, from Esau's hands, for I am fearful of him that he will come and kill me, and the mother with sons. And you spoke, I will thoroughly do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea that cannot be counted for multitude." Then he lodged there that night, and from his own things selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 sheep, 20 rams, 30 nursing camels with their young, 40 heifers, 10 steers, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. And he entrusted them to the hands of his slaves, every herd by itself, and commanded his slaves, "Cross over before me and put a distance between the 2 herds." Then he commanded the chief slave, saying, "When Esau my brother meets you asking, 'Who are you and where are you going, and what are these things that are in front of you?' then answer him, 'These are your servant Jacob's, this is a gift sent to my master Esau, and he is behind us.'" He also commanded the 2nd and 3rd along with all that followed the herd, saying, "Speak in this way to Esau when you find him. And tell him also that your servant Jacob is behind us. Because he thought, I will appease him with these gifts that go before me, and after this I will see his face. Then afterwards perhaps he will accept me." So the gifts went ahead of him, and he lodged that night in the camp. And he got up in the night, and took his 2 women and his 2 female slaves and his 11 sons, and crossed over at the crossing point at Jabbok stream. And he took them and sent them over the stream, sending his possessions over too. Then Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a male until sunrise. And when he saw that he could not overpower him, he struck the outside of his thigh, and the inside of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for it's sunrise." And he replied, "I will not let you go except you bless me." Then he said to him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "Jacob." And he answered, "Your name will no more be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with Elohim and with man and have overcome." Then Jacob asked him, saying, "Tell me your name." And he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, because I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life has been saved. Then as he passed beyond Peniel the sun rose upon him, and he limped on his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel are not eating the muscle near of the thigh to this day, because he struck the inside of Jacob's thigh near the muscle of the hip. And Jacob raised his eyes, and looking, saw Esau coming, and with him 400 men. So he separated the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 women slaves. Then he put the women slaves and their children first, and Leah and her children second, and Rachel and Joseph last. And he passed through them, and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, and drew near to his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and dropped his arms around his neck, embracing him, and they shed tears. And he raised his eyes, and saw the women and the children, and said, "Who are these with you?" And he replied, "The children that Elohim has graciously given your servant." Then the women slaves came near with their children, and they bowed down. And Leah also with her children came near bowing down, and after that came Joseph with Rachel close by, and they bowed themselves down too. And he said, "What is the meaning of all these herds that I encountered?" And he replied, "These are to find favor in the eyes of my master." But Esau said, "I have plenty, my brother, so keep what you have for yourself." But Jacob answered, "Now providing that I have found favor in your eyes, please receive these gifts from my hands, since I have seen your face, as if I had seen the face of Elohim, and you were pleased with me. Take my blessing that has come to you, since Elohim has dealt favorably with me, and because I have everything." So he urged him, and he received it. Then he said, "Let us pull up our caravans, and depart now and move on." And he replied to him, "My master recognizes that the children are tender, and the flocks and herds with the nursing are with me, so if our men should drive them too hard, then all these herds would die. Let my master now travel on before his servant, and I will lead on at a slower pace as the legs of our business dictate. Then we and the children will walk by foot until we come to my master in Seir." Then Esau replied, "Let me leave some people for an escort." But Jacob replied, "What need for doing that? Just let me find favor in the eyes of my master." So Esau turned back that day on his return to Seir. And Jacob departed for Succoth and established his house and made shelters for his cattle. That is why the name of the place is called Succoth, that is, shelters. Then Jacob came to Salem, a city of Shechem, in the land of Canaan, after he came from Paddan Aram, and encamped near the city. And he purchased a portion of a field where he had pitched his tent, from the hands of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 monetary units. And he established an altar and commissioned it El Elohe Israel, that is Elohim the Elohim of Israel. Then Dinah the daughter of Leah, that she gendered to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem the son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the land saw her, he seized her, raping and humiliating her. And this person clung to Dinah the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke passionately to her. Then Shechem spoke to his dad Hamor saying, "Get me this girl to have as my woman." Now Jacob heard that he had raped Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his livestock in the field, and Jacob was speechless until they came back. And Hamor the father of Shechem went to Jacob to speak with him. Then the sons of Jacob came back from the field when they heard about it, and the men were extremely hurt, and they were very angry, because that man had performed profane actions towards Israel in having sexual relations with Jacob's daughter, a thing that was forbidden. Then Hamor spoke with them saying, "The passions of my son Shechem has set his love for your daughter, so please grant permission for him to be his woman. And you will have marriages with us, and give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourself. Then you will dwell with us, and the land will be here to live in, and to do trade with us, and for acquiring possessions." And Shechem said to her dad and to her brothers, "Let me secure your acceptance of this proposal in your eyes, and whatever you will say to me I will pay wages for her. Set the cost for the bride to its highest purchase price, and I will pay you whatever you decide, but let me acquire the girl to be his woman." But the sons of Jacob gave a false reply to Shechem, and Hamor his dad because of the raping of Dinah their sister. And they replied, "We cannot agree to these terms to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, because that would be shameful according to our culture. We will however agree to your proposal providing that you circumcise all of your males as is our custom. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you, and will become one nation. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and will be gone." And their words pleased Hamor, and Shechem Hamor's son. Then the young man, the most honored of his dad's house, did not hesitate, but immediately circumcised himself because he desired Jacob's daughter. And Hamor and Shechem his son came to the public meeting place of their city, and spoke with the men of their city saying, "These men are peaceable with us, so let them live in the land and trade with us. The land is large enough for them to occupy, so let us exchange our daughters with them and them with us in marriage. But these people will only agree to become one with us if we agree to their custom of being circumcised exactly as they are. Will not their cattle, their possessions, and all their livestock become ours by inheritance? Only consent to this one thing and they will live with us." And to Hamor and Shechem his son agreed all that went out to the public meeting place of the city, and every male was circumcised, all that went out to the public meeting place of the city. And on the third day when they were in pain from the circumcision, then 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon, and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, and entered the city breaching its security, and slaughtered all the males. And they killed Hamor and Shechem his son with the blade of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and departed. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and plundered the city, because they had raped their sister. They seized their sheep, oxen, donkeys, and what was in the city as well as what was in the field, and all their wealth, children, and their women took they captive, and plundered all their dwellings. But Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me that causes me to stink of wickedness among the inhabitants of the land. The Canaanites and Perizzites will now unite against me, and I being few in number, will be slain and destroyed including all my house." And they answered, "As a prostitute does he make our sister?" Then Elohim spoke to Jacob, "Get up, depart for Bethel, making it your residence. Make an altar there to Elohim who appeared to you when you ran away from the presence of Esau your brother." Then Jacob said to his household, "Put away the foreign Elohim that are in your midst and be clean, and change your clothing. And let us get up, and depart for Bethel, and I will make an altar there to Elohim, who answered me in the day of my distress, and traveled with me wherever I went." Then they gave over to Jacob all the foreign Elohim that were in their hand, and earrings worn on their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak, terebinth tree, that was at Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of Elohim spread upon all the surrounding cities, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan. Luz is the earlier name given for Bethel, he and all the people that were with him. He then established an altar there, and called the place El Bethel, because Elohim appeared to him after he had run away from the presence of his brother. But Deborah Rebekah's nurse died, and she was buried near Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Alon-Bashuth, Oak of Weeping. Elohim appeared to Jacob again, when he came out of Paddan Aram, and blessed him. Then Elohim spoke to him, Your name is Jacob, but your name will not be called Jacob again, but Israel will be your name, and he proclaimed his name Israel. And Elohim spoke to him, I am El Shaddai, branch off and become numerous, a nation and a company of nations will you become, and kings will come out of your loins. And the land that I gave Abraham and Isaac will be given to you, and to your offspring after you. That land will be bestowed to your descendants. Then Elohim ascended up from him in the standing place where he talked with him. Then Jacob set up a pillar at the spot where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone, and then poured a drink offering on it, as well as pouring oil over it. And Jacob called the name of the standing place where Elohim spoke with him, Bethel. And they traveled from Bethel, but they were still some distance from Ephrat when Rachel went into labor, and she had a hard childbirth. Then during her hard labor the midwife said to her, Do not fear, for you will have this son also. But as she was dying, her death was near, she called his name Benoni, but his dad called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried while on their journey to Ephrat, which is Bethlehem. Jacob set a pillar on her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. And Israel departed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Eder. Then after Israel had lived in that land, Reuben went and had sexual relations with Bilhah his dad's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Now there were 12 sons of Jacob, the sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were gendered to him in Paddan Aram. And Jacob came to Isaac his dad in Mamre, to the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac lived. The days of Isaac were 180 years. And Isaac expired and died, and was removed from his people, being old and satisfied with days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Now these are the genealogies of Esau, who is Edom. Esau acquired his women from the daughters of Canaan, Adah the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah the daughter of Anah the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Bashemath Ishmael's daughter, sister of Nebaioth. And Adah gendered to Esau Eliphaz, and Bashemath gendered Ruel, and Aholibamah gendered Jeish, Halam, Korah. These are the sons of Esau, which were gendered to him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his women, his sons and his daughters, and all the people of his house, and his cattle, his livestock and all his possessions that he acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to a land away from his brother Jacob. Because their possessions were too large for them to occupy the same area together, and the land where they were foreigners could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. And these are the genealogies of Esau the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz the son of Adah the woman of Esau, Ruel the son of Bashemath the woman of Esau. And the sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, Kenaz. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz Esau's son, and she gendered to Eliphaz Amalek. These were the sons of Adah Esau's woman. These are the sons of Ruel, Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These were the sons of Bashemath, Esau's woman. And these were the sons of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah the daughter of Zibeon, Esau's woman, and she gendered to Esau Jeish, Halam, Korah. These are the chiefs of the sons of Esau, the sons of Eliphaz the firstborn son of Esau, chief Teman, chief Omar, chief Zepho, chief Kenaz, chief Korah, chief Gatam, and chief Amalek. These are the chiefs of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were the sons of Adah. And these are the sons of Ruel Esau's son, chief Nahath, chief Zerah, chief Shammah, chief Mizah. These are the chiefs of Ruel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Bashemath Esau's woman. And these are the sons of Aholibamah Esau's woman, chief Jeish, chief Halam, chief Korah. These were the chiefs of Aholibamah the daughter of Anah, Esau's woman. These are the sons of Esau, who is Edom, and these are their chiefs. These are the sons of Seir the Horite, who lived in the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Disan, Ezer, and Disan. These are the chiefs of the Horites, the children of Seir in the land of Edom. And the children of Lotan were Hori, Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. And the children of Shobal were these: Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, Onam. And these are the children of Zibeon, both Ajah and Anna. This was the same Anna that found the hot springs in the wilderness, as he grazed the donkeys of Zibeon his father. And the children of Anna were these, Disan, and Aholibamah the daughter of Anna. And these are the children of Disan, Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, Charan. The children of Ezer are these, Bilhan, Zavan, Akan. The children of Disan are these, Uz, and Aaron. These are the chiefs that came of the Horites, Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, Chief Anna, Chief Disan, Chief Ezer, Chief Disan. These are the chiefs of Hori, among their chiefs in the land of Seir. And these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom, before there were any kings reigning over the children of Israel. And Bela the son of Beor reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. Then Bela died, and Jobab the son of Zerah of Bozrah reigned in his place. Then Jobab died, and Husham of the land of Temani reigned in his place. Then Husham died, and Hadad the son of Bedad, who struck Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his place, and the name of his city was Avith. Then Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his place. Then Samlah died, and Saul of Rehoboth by the river reigned in his place. Then Saul died, and Balanan the son of Achbor reigned in his place. Then Balanan the son of Achbor died, and Hadar reigned in his place, and the name of his city was Pau, and his woman's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mezahab. These are the names of the chiefs of Esau, according to their clans, and by their regions, Chief Timnah, Chief Alvah, Chief Jetheth, Chief Aholibamah, Chief Elah, Chief Pinon, Chief Kenaz, Chief Teman, Chief Mibzar, Chief Magdiel, and Chief Iram. These are the chiefs of Edom, according to their property rights, denoted by their districts. This is Esau, the father of the Edomites. And Jacob lived in the land where his father was a foreigner, in the land of Canaan. These are the genealogies of Jacob. Joseph, a 17-year-old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the boy was with the sons of Bilhah, and the sons of Zilpah, his dad's women, and Joseph brought a report of something bad about them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son born to him in his old age, and he made him a long coat. When his brothers saw that their dad loved him more than all of them, they hated him, and would not speak with him on good terms. Then Joseph had a dream, and he told the vision to his brothers, and they hated him even more. And he said to them, "Listen to this vision that I have dreamed. We were nodding sheaves in the field when my sheaf was raised, and became established, and your sheaves encircled and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers answered him, "Will you become a king to rule, or will you have power over us?" And their hatred for him increased because of the dreams and for what he was speaking. Then he dreamed another vision and told it to his brothers, saying, "I have dreamed another vision, and the sun, moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." And when he told his dad and brothers, his dad reprimanded him, then asked him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Will I with your mother and brothers be brought to bow ourselves down to you in the land?" His brothers remained jealous of him, but his dad remembered the words. Now his brothers left to pasture their dad's flock in Shechem. After this Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Get going now, for I send you to them." And he replied, "I'm ready." Then he said, "Go ahead and find out whether your brothers are doing well, and the status of the flocks, and bring me back a statement." So he left the valley of Hebron and came to Shechem. A person later found him wandering in the field and asked him, "Who are you searching for?" And he replied, "I'm searching for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are pasturing their flocks?" The man replied, "They are gone from here now, but I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph then left and continued after his brothers and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him in the distance, they crafted a plan against him to have him killed. They were also talking with each other, saying, "Here comes the king of dreams. Let's go kill him and throw him into some well, then we can say some mutilating beast has devoured him, and we can then see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard the plot, and he rescued him from their hands and commanded, "We must not kill him." And Reuben said to them, "Spill no blood, but throw him into this pasture's well, but do not lay a hand on him." This was proposed in order to deliver him out of their hand and to bring him back to his dad. So it happened that when Joseph came to his brothers, that they pulled off the coat of Joseph, the long coat that he wore. And they seized him, and threw him into a well, but the well was empty with no water in it. Then they sat down to eat some food, but when they looked up, a caravan of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels carrying spices, balm, and myrrh, bearing their loads on their journey down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but refrain our hands from killing him, because he is our brother and of our flesh." So his brothers listened and gave their consent. Midianites merchantmen passed by, raising and lifting Joseph out of the well, And they then sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. So Joseph was brought into Egypt. Later Reuben returned to the well, but Joseph was not there, and Reuben ripped his clothes. And he returned to his brothers, saying, "The boy is gone, so now how can I go home?" And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid from the female goats and dipped the coat in its blood. And they took the coat, bringing it to their dad, and said, "We have found this, but do not know whether it is your son's coat or not." And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's coat, a mutilating beast has devoured him." Joseph is without doubt ripped to pieces. And Jacob ripped his clothes, and put sackcloth on his hips, and mourned for his son a great many days. And all his sons and all his daughters got up to comfort him. But he refused their comforting, saying, "I will descend to the grave, Sheol, mourning for my son." So his dad shed many tears for him. This was happening while the Midianites sold Joseph, while in Egypt, to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. Then Judah left his brothers, and went to an Adullamite man named Hirah. And Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua, and he acquired her and had sexual relations with her. She then became pregnant, and gendered a son, and he called his name And she became pregnant again, and gendered another son, and she called his name Onan. Another pregnancy occurred, and she gendered a son, and called his name Shelah, and he was at Kezib when her baby was born. Later Judah acquired a woman for his firstborn named Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was a bad man in Yhwh's eyes, and Yhwh killed him. Judah said to Onan, "Go to your brother's woman and marry her to raise up offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, so when he had sexual relations with his brother's woman, he ejaculated his semen on the ground, corrupting it, so his brother would not be given offspring. And this was a bad act in the eyes of Yhwh, so he killed him too. Judah then said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Live as a widow in your father's house until Shelah my son is grown," for he thought he might die too as his brothers did. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. And many days passed, and the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah mourned, and went up to his sheep shearers, he and Hirah's friend the Adullamite, Timnath. They also informed Tamar that her father-in-law had gone up to Timnath to shear his sheep. She then took off her clothing of widowhood, and covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself up to sit in the opening of Anim, the two fountains, that is on the road to Timnath. She had also seen that Shelah had grown up, but she had not been given to him for a woman as promised. When Judah looked at her, he thought she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. And he bent down to her and asked, "Can I have sex with you?" Because he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she replied, "What will you pay me for giving you sex?" He answered, "I will send you a female goat from the flock." And she replied, "What can you give me now as a deposit for this transaction?" And he said, "What can I give you for a deposit?" She then replied, "Your seal, cord, and the staff that is in your hand." So he gave it to her, they had sex, and she became pregnant by him. Then she got up and left, took off her veil, and dressed again in the clothing of widowhood. Later Judah sent the female goat by the hand of his friend the Adullamite, and to claim back his deposit from the woman's hand, but he could not find her. Then he asked the men of the area, "Where is the prostitute at the opening of Anim, the two fountains, that is on the road to Timnath?" And they replied, "There is no prostitute in that area." He returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her, and also the men of the area say that there is no prostitute at that place." Judah replied, "Let her keep what she has to prevent us from being disgraced. I did send this female goat, and you have not found her." Then 3 months later it was told Judah that Tamar your daughter-in-law has played the whore, and that she is also with child by prostitution. And Judah commanded, "Bring her out and let her be burnt up." But when she was brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law declaring, "I am with child by the man who owns these things," and she asked, "Can you recognize who owns the seal, cord, and staff?" And Judah acknowledged them and answered, "She has been more righteous than me because I did not give her to Shelah my son." And she revealed herself to no more men. When the time arrived for her to give birth, she had twins in her womb. Then during her labor one put out his hand, and the midwife grabbed his hand and tied it with a scarlet thread, saying, "This one came out first." But he drew his hand back in, and his brother came out instead, and she said, "What, you have broken forth, on you is the breach," and he was named Pharez. And afterward his brother came out, that had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zara. Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, who was an Egyptian, purchased him from the hands of the Ishmaelites, who had brought him there. Yhwh was with Joseph, and he was a successful man in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that Yhwh was with him, and that Yhwh made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Then Joseph gained favor in his eyes, and he served him and was made executive housekeeper, and all that he had was entrusted into his hands. And from the time that he had made him executive housekeeper over all that he had, YHWH had blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. The blessing of YHWH was on all he had, both in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and did not keep track of what he had, except for the bread that he ate. And Joseph was a handsome man and well-favored. Some time later, after all these things took place, his master's woman looked at Joseph with lustful eyes, and she whispered, "Sleep with me and make love to me." But he refused and said to his master's woman, "My master has no idea what has been put under my care in the house, and he has entrusted all that he has into my hands. No one has more authority in this house than I, neither has he withheld anything from me except you, because you are his woman. How could I do this great wickedness, and sin against Elohim?" And as time passed she continued to speak with Joseph every day, but he would not yield to her wishes to have sex with her or to even spend time with her. And one day it happened that Joseph came into the house to do his business, and he was all alone by himself in the house. Then she grabbed him by his clothes begging, "Sleep with me," but he shook her loose, and some clothing was left in her hand as he fled, and ran outside. After this she saw that he had left some of his attire in her hand, and had run out. Then she called to the men of her house and spoke to them declaring, "See, he has brought in to us a Hebrew man to play with us." Then he approached me to have sex with me, but I screamed with a loud voice. Immediately after he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his clothing with me, and he ran outside. Then she kept his clothing in her possession until his master came home. Then she spoke repeating these same words declaring, "The Hebrew slave that you have brought to us approached me, to play and make love with me. But when I raised my voice and screamed, he ran outside but left his clothing with me." So when his master heard the words of his woman that she spoke to him, telling him what the slave did to her, then his nostrils flared and he became furious. And Joseph's master seized him, and had him put into prison, a jail where the king's prisoners were shackled. This was the jail he was put into. But YHWH was with Joseph and showed him kindness and gave him favor in the sight of the chief warden of the prison. And the chief warden of the prison appointed Joseph for handling all the prisoners in the prison, and he was the responsible one for everything that took place there. The chief warden of the prison paid no attention to the affairs under Joseph's control because YHWH was with him, and whatever he did YHWH made it succeed. And it came to pass after these things, that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their master the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry against two of his officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. And he confined them to prison in the house of the captain of the guard, into the same jail where Joseph was imprisoned. Then the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph and he took care of them, and they spent time in jail. And they both had a dream one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were confined in the prison. Then Joseph came to them in the morning, and looking at them saw they were perplexed. He then spoke to Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the jail of his master's house, asking them, "Why do you look so distressed today?" And they said to him, "We have both had dreams but no one can interpret them." And Joseph answered them, "Do not interpretations originate from Elohim? Tell me now what your dreams were." So the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream a vine tree was in front of me. And in the vine tree were 3 branches, and they appeared as if to put out buds and flowers, and from them came grapes ready for picking. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand and I picked the grapes, and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it, the 3 branches equal 3 days, now within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head, and restore you to your office, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand, like you used to do when you were his butler. But remember me when it will go well with you, and show me kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me released from this house. For indeed I was abducted and carried away from the land of the Hebrews, and here in Egypt I have done nothing, nor should they have put me into that well." After the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head, and in the top basket are of all kinds of Pharaoh's food, the work of a baker, and the birds were eating them out of the basket, from off my head." Then Joseph answered him, and responded with this interpretation of the dream. "The 3 baskets equal 3 days, now within 3 days will Pharaoh take your head off, and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will feed off of your flesh." Then when the 3rd day came, being Pharaoh's birthday, he made a banquet for all his slaves, and he brought attention to the positions of the chief butler and the chief baker among his slaves. And he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker exactly as Joseph had interpreted to them. The chief butler, however, did not remember Joseph but forgot about him. At the end of 2 full years, when they had passed, Pharaoh dreamed, and he stood by the Nile River. Then there came up out of the river 7 beautifully appearing fattened cows, and they fed among the reeds. And after this came up 7 other lean cows, of distressed appearance that stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. The lean and distressed cows ate up the 7 fat cows of good appearance, and then Pharaoh awoke. So he slept again, dreaming a second time, and 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, fat and good. And then 7 small and scorched ears with the east wind sprouted up after them. Then the 7 small ears swallowed up the 7 fat and full ears. And then Pharaoh awoke from the dream. And it came about that at sunrise his disposition was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dream, but none could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then spoke the chief butler to Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my errors this day. Pharaoh was angry with his slaves, and sent me to prison and the captain of the guard's house, both the chief baker and myself. And we had a dream one night, the 2 of us, and the dreams had a special interpretation. And there was with us a young man, a Hebrew slave of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams as each of us had dreamed. Then later everything came to pass as he had interpreted. My office was restored and the other one was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him very quickly out of the well, his jail, and he shaved himself, and changed his clothing and came into Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is none that can interpret it, and I have heard it said that you can understand a dream and its interpretation. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in my power, but Elohim will give Pharaoh a complete answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dream, I stood on the bank of the river. And there came up out of the river 7 fattened cows of good appearance, and they grazed among the reeds. Then 7 other lean cows came up after them, poor and of an extremely distressed appearance, such as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt in such bad quality. And the lean and distressed appearing cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. After they had eaten them up, no one could discern that they had eaten them because they were still of a distressed appearance, like they had been at first. I then awoke from the dream. And I saw in my dream, and 7 ears came up on one stalk, full and good. Also 7 withered ears sprung up after them, small, and scorched with an east wind. The small ears swallowed up the 7 good ears, and I told this to the magicians, but no one could make known its meaning to me. Joseph answered Pharaoh that this dream of Pharaoh came from Elohim to show Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years, so this dream is one and the same. And the 7 small and distressed appearing cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 worthless ears scorched by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. These words that I have declared to Pharaoh is what Elohim is about to do. He has now revealed this to Pharaoh. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And then after this the 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will exhaust the land. And the plenty will not be remembered in the land because of the famine to follow, for it will be very oppressive. And because of the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, certainly this thing is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hurrying to do it. Let Pharaoh now search for a man of understanding who is wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh should do this, and also should appoint commissioners over the land, to take up the 5th of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty. And they gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep the food in the cities. This food will be for storage in the land against the 7 years of famine that will come to the land of Egypt, so the land does not perish through this famine. And the speech was pleasing in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his slaves. Pharaoh said to his slaves, Can we find anyone like this man in whom the spirit of Elohim resides? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is none so understanding and wise as you are. You will be over my house, and according to your words and speech will all my people be equipped. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have appointed you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and dressed him in clothing of fine linen, and put a gold necklace around his neck. He also had him to ride in his second chariot, and they proclaimed before him, Bow down, because he was made a ruler over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without you a man does not lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath for his woman, the daughter of Potiphar priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh king of Egypt. And Joseph left from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth abundantly by the handfuls. And he gathered up all the food during the 7 years, that was in the land of Egypt, and delivered up the food to the cities, the food of the field, which surrounded every city, he gathered to its center, and Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, so much so, that he stopped counting, for it could not be counted. And to Joseph were gendered 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath the daughter of Potiphar a priest of On gendered to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for Elohim has made me forget all my trouble, and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim. For Elohim has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. So the 7 years of abundance, that was in the land of Egypt, came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said, and the famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was food. And when all the land of Egypt was hungry, the people cried to Pharaoh for food, and Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph, what he says to you, do. And the famine covered all the surface of the land, and Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold to the Egyptians, but the famine grew worse in the land of Egypt. Then all the inhabitants of the land came into Egypt to Joseph, for buying corn, because the famine was so severe in all lands. Now when Jacob learned that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, So why are you looking at each other? And he said, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt, so go down there and purchase for us, so that we may survive and not die. And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob did not send with his brothers, because he thought, that some harm might befall him. So the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, because the famine was in the land of Canaan also. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Then Joseph saw his brothers, and he recognized them, but spoke as if it were to strangers, somewhat harshly, and asking them, Where do you come from? And they replied, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. But Joseph remembered the dreams that he dreamed about them, and declared to them, You are spies come to observe a defenseless land, and this is why you have come. But they replied to him, No. My master, your servants have come to buy food only. All of us are servants of one man, and we are honest men, your servants are no spies. And he answered them, No. But to observe this defenseless land is your purpose for coming. And they replied, Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and the youngest is today with our father, but one is not living. Joseph replied to them, It is as I have stated to you, declaring that you are spies. But your story can be verified providing your youngest brother comes here. However, as certain as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave here unless he comes. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother. But the rest of you will be imprisoned until your words can be proved whether you are truthful, or else you are spies, I say, as certainly as Pharaoh lives. Then he confined them all together in the prison for 3 days. Joseph said to them on the 3rd day, Do this and live, for it is Elohim I fear. If you are truthful men, then let one of your brothers be imprisoned in the house of your confinement, but the rest of you go and carry corn to the famine of your houses. But bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words can be verified, and you will not die. And they did so. And they said to each other, We are very guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the pain and suffering of his life when he implored our favor, but we would not hear him. That is why this trouble has come our way. And Reuben answered them, saying, Did not I speak to you, saying, Do not sin against the boy, but you would not hear, so now his blood is on our heads. But they did not perceive that Joseph understood them, because he spoke to them through an interpreter. And he turned himself away from them and wept, but then returned to them again and talked with them, then took from them Simeon, and shackled him before their eyes. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to put back every man's money into his sack, and to give them food for the journey, and so this was done for them. They loaded up their donkeys with the corn, and made their departure from there. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed, at the place of their lodging, he found his money hidden in his sack's opening. And he said to his brothers, My money is returned, and it is in my sack. And they were depressed, as well as afraid, saying one to another, What is this that Elohim has done to us? Then they came to Jacob their dad in the land of Canaan, and told him all that happened to them, saying, The man who is master of the land spoke harshly to us and considered us spies of the land. And we replied to him, We are honest men, and are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father, one is not living, and the youngest is today with our dad in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the master of the land, said to us, There is one way to know if you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food, because of the famine, to your households, and be gone. Then bring your youngest brother back to me, then I will know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. Then I will release your brother, and you will do your trading in the land. And it came to pass as they emptied their sacks, that every man's bundle of money was in his sack, and when all of them, their father included, saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Then Jacob their dad said to them, You have made me barren of my children. Joseph is not alive, and Simeon is captured, and you want to take Benjamin away. Why have all these things happened against me? Reuben spoke to his dad saying, Kill my 2 sons, if I do not bring him to you, put him into my hands, and I will bring him to you again. And he replied, My son will not go down with you because his brother is dead, and only he survives, and if harm should come to him on the road of this journey you take, then you shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave, Sheol. Now the famine was very oppressive in the land. Then after they had eaten up the corn that they had brought out of Egypt, their dad said to them, Go again and purchase us a little food. But Judah spoke to him saying, The man did bear witness repeatedly saying, You will not see my face unless your brother is with you. So if you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down because the man told us, You will not see my face except your brother is with you. Then Israel replied, How come you acted so improperly with me as to tell the man that you had another brother? And they answered, The man asked us point blankly concerning ourselves and our families saying, Is your dad still alive, and if we had another brother? We answered him exactly according to these words. We certainly had no idea he would say, Bring your brother down? And Judah said to Israel his dad, Send the lad with me and we will get up and go so we may remain alive and not perish, both you and us plus our little ones. I will pledge by my hand his safety, you can require it from me if I do not bring him to you and send him before you, then I will have sinned against you all my days. If we had not lingered here, surely by now we could have returned back home a second time. Okay then, said their father Israel, if it is to be, then do this, take of the best choice products of the land in your vessels, and carry them as a present to the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices, and myrrh, nuts, and almonds. And take double money in your hand plus the money that was brought back again in the opening of your sacks, carry it back again in your hand, perhaps it was an oversight, take also your brother, get up now and return to the man. May El Shaddai bestow on you his compassion before the man, that he may dismiss your other brother and Benjamin. If I be miscarried of my children, I am barren. And the men took the presents, and they took double money in their hands, along with Benjamin, and got up, and went down to Egypt, and stood in the presence of Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the head slave of his house, Bring these men home and butcher some food and prepare the table, for these men will dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph commanded, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Then the men were afraid when brought into the house of Joseph, and said, It must be the money that we found in the opening of our bags, that we have brought back to you from the land of Canaan. This came about that he may turn upon us with force, fall upon us and take us for slaves, and our donkeys too. And they came near to the servant of Joseph's house, and they talked with him at the door of the house, and said, O master, we really came down in the beginning to buy food. And it came to pass, when we came to the lodge, that we opened our sacks, and every man's money was in the opening of his sack, our money in full weight. Look, it is in our hands here, and we have brought it back. And additional money we have brought down in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put our money back in our sacks. And he replied, Peace, have no fear, your Elohim and the Elohim of your father has given you treasure in your sacks, I had your money. And he brought Simeon out to them. The man then brought the men into Joseph's house, and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. And they prepared the gifts for Joseph's reception at noon, for they heard that they should eat food there. Then when Joseph came home, they brought him the gifts that were in their hands into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the ground. He asked them how they were doing, and also asked, Is your dad well, the old man that you spoke about? Is he still alive? And they answered, Your servant our father is in good health, he is still alive. And they bowed down their heads and prostrated themselves. He then raised up his eyes, and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? And he said, Elohim show favor to you, my son. And Joseph quickly hurried out, for his bowels did turn with emotion for his brother, and he sought a private place to cry, so he entered into his bedroom, and shed many tears there. Then he washed his face and went out, and restrained himself, and said, Go ahead and serve the food. And they set a place for him alone, and places for them by themselves, and also for the Egyptians, who ate with him too, because the Egyptians do not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is a repulsive thing for the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men were amazed with this among themselves. And he took and sent portions of food and drink to them from his table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they drank, and got drunk with him. And he commanded the servant of his house, saying, Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his grain money. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. Then at sunrise the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. And when they had gone out of the city, and were not very far off, Joseph said to his steward, Get up, follow after the men, and when you have overtaken them, say to them, Why have you rewarded bad for good? Is not this the cup that my master drinks from, and practices divination with? It was bad for you to have done this. And he overtook them, and he spoke to them these same words. Then they replied to him, How can you say such things, my master? Elohim forbid that your servants should act according to these words. Look, the money that we found in our sacks opening, we returned to you from the land of Canaan. How then would we steal out of your master's house silver or gold? With whoever of your servants it is found, let him be executed, and we will also be your master's slaves. And he answered, Let it now be as the words you have spoken, with whoever it is found he will be my slave, but you will be innocent. Then they quickly took their sacks to the ground, unpacking them, and every man opened his sack. And he searched, beginning with the eldest and finishing with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they ripped their clothes and loaded every man his donkey, and returned to the city. And Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers arrived, and cast themselves down on the ground before him. And Joseph said to them, What deed is this that you have done? Did not you know that such a man as I can certainly divine? And Judah replied, What shall we say to my master, and what can we speak? How could we clear ourselves? Elohim has found out the sin of your servant, so we are now all my master's slaves, including him with whom the cup was found. And he replied, Elohim forbid that I should do all that, but the man in whose hand the cup was found, he will be my slave, and as for the rest of you, get up and go in peace to your dad. Then Judah came near to him and said, O my master, let your servant speak a word in my master's ear, and do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are the same as Pharaoh. My master asked his servants, asking, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my master, We have a dad, an old man, and a boy of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his dad loves him very much. And you said to your servants, Bring him down to me that I may set my eyes on him. But we said to my master, The boy cannot leave his dad, because if he should leave his father, his dad could die prematurely. And you said to your servants, Except your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. And when we came up to your servant my father, we told him the words of my master. Then our dad said, Return and buy us a little food. And we replied, We are not able to go down, only if our young brother is with us, then we can go down, for we are not able to see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. And your servant my father said to us, You know that my woman gendered me 2 sons. One went out from me, and I said, No doubt he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. So if you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave, Sheol. When I now come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, seeing that his life is knitted so tightly up in the boy's life, it will come to pass when he sees that the boy is not with us, that he will prematurely die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to the grave, Sheol. For your servant became a pledge for the boy to my dad, saying, If I bring him not to you, then I will bear the sin to my father for the ages of time. Please take me now as your slave, instead of the boy as a slave to my master, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my dad if the boy is not with me? I could not bear to see the calamity that would befall my dad. Then Joseph could not hold back his passions before all of them that stood by him, and he cried out with a loud voice. He then told everyone to leave his presence, and no one was with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And his voice cried loudly in weeping, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard of it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, does my dad still live? And his brothers were speechless to him, for they were in great fear at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, Come close to me, and they came near. And he said, I am Joseph your brother, who you sold into Egypt. Do not feel grieved, or angry with yourselves that you sold me here, for Elohim did send me before you to sustain your life. For these 2 years has the famine been in the land, and there are still 5 years to go, in which there will not be plowing or harvesting. And Elohim sent me before you to sustain a remnant in the land, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you that sent me here, but Elohim, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh and master of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry up now, and go to my dad and tell him, Your son Joseph says, Elohim has made me master of all Egypt, come down to me and do not linger. And you will live in the land of Goshen, and you will be close to me, you and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. And there I will support you, for there are still 5 years of famine left, otherwise you and your household with all that you have, will become impoverished. Now your own eyes see, in the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my own mouth that speaks to you. And you will tell my dad of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and you will hurry now and bring my dad down here. And he hugged and grabbed his brother Benjamin around the neck, and shed many tears, and Benjamin cried on his neck too. Moreover, he hugged all his brothers, and shed more tears with them, and after that his brothers communed with him. When the news of this reached Pharaoh's house, reporting, Joseph's brothers have come, then it pleased Pharaoh and his slaves very much. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, I want you to do this thing, load up your beasts and take yourselves back to the land of Canaan. And get your father and your households, and come to me, and I will give you the good things of the land of Egypt, and you will eat from the choicest parts of the land. Now you are commanded, do this, take these, covered, wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your women, and bring your father and come. Also, do not worry about your vessels and implements, for the goods of all the land of Egypt are yours. And the children of Israel prepared to go, and Joseph gave them covered wagons, according to the commandment of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To all of them he gave each man changes of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothing. And to his dad he sent after these things 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with corn and bread and meat for his dad's journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed, and he said to them, see that you do not fall out into the ditch on your journey. So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. And told him, saying, Joseph is still alive. And he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob was dumbfounded, and could not believe it. And they told him all the words of Joseph that he had said to them, and when he saw the covered wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the vigor of Jacob their dad was quickened. And Israel replied that this is so great. Joseph my son is still alive, and I will go to see him before I die. And Israel set out on his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices to the Elohim of his father Isaac. And Elohim spoke to Israel in the nighttime vision and spoke, Jacob, Jacob. And he replied, Here I am. And he spoke, I am Elohim, the Elohim of your father. Do not be afraid to go down into Egypt, for from you I will establish a great nation there. I will go down with you into Egypt, and I will cause your retreat, and Joseph will put his hand upon your eyes when you die. And Jacob set out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried away Jacob their father, and their little ones, and their women in the covered wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him in. And they took their cattle and their possessions that they had collected in the land of Canaan and came to Egypt, Jacob, and all his offspring with him. His sons and his grandsons with him, his daughters and his granddaughters, and all his offspring he brought with him into Egypt. And these are the names of the children of Israel that came to Egypt, Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben, Hanoch, Phalah, Hezron, Parmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Shimon, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul the son of a Canaanitish woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Pharez, Zerah, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Phuvah, Job, Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Serach, Elon, Jaleel. These are the sons of Leah, which she gendered to Jacob in Paddan-aram, with his daughter Dinah. These sons and daughters totaled 33 in all. The sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggi, Shunai, Esban, Eri, Arodi, Areli. The sons of Asher, Jimnah, Ishua, Iswi, Beriah, and Sarah their sister, and the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, who Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she gendered to Jacob, even 16 people. The sons of Rachel Jacob's woman were Joseph, and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, which Asenath the daughter of Potiphar priest of On gendered to him. The sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Jerah, Naaman, Rush, Muppim, Huppim, Ard. These are the sons of Rachel that were born to Jacob, all these people numbered 14. The sons of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jeziel, Guni, Jezer, Shillem. These are the sons of Bilhah, which Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she gendered these to Jacob, all these people numbered 7. All the people that came with Jacob to Egypt, that came out of his loins, besides Jacob's sons' women, all these people numbered 66. And the sons of Joseph that were born to him in Egypt, were 2 people, all the people of the house of Jacob, that came to Egypt, were 75. And he sent Judah before him to Joseph, to get directions to Goshen, and then they entered the land of Goshen. Then Joseph harnessed his chariot, and went up to meet Israel his father in Goshen, and presented himself to him, and cast himself upon his neck, and shed many tears on his neck for quite a while. Then Israel said to Joseph, I am ready to die at last, since I have now seen your face, because you are still alive. And Joseph said to his brothers and to his dad's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say to him, My brothers and my dad's house, that were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade has been in livestock, and they have brought their flocks, and their herds, and all that they have. Then when Pharaoh will call you and shall ask you, What is your occupation? You will say, Your servant's trade has been in livestock since our youth until now, both ourselves as well as our ancestors too. Then you will be permitted to live in the land of Goshen, because every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brothers, and their flocks, and their herds, and all that they have come out of the land of Canaan, and now they are in the land of Goshen. And he took some of his brothers, 5 men of them, and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh asked his brothers, What is your occupation? And they replied to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we, and also our ancestors as well. They also said to Pharaoh, We have come to live in the land, for there is no pasture for the flock that your servants have, for oppressive is the famine in the land of Canaan. So now, let your servants live in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, Your father and your brothers come to you. The land of Egypt is before you, so in the choicest parts of the land settle your father and brothers, to live in the land of Goshen. Let them remain there, and if you know any man of ability among them, then make them rulers over my livestock. And then Joseph brought in Jacob his dad and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, How old are you? Then Jacob answered Pharaoh, The years of my lifetime are 130 years, few and difficult have the days and years of my life been, but have not been as long as the days of my forefathers, in the span of their lifetimes. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before him. Then Joseph settled his dad and brothers, and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the choicest parts of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph supported his dad and brothers, and his dad's household, with food, according to the number of their children. And there was no food in all the land, for the famine was very oppressive, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, for the corn that they bought, and Joseph brought the money to Pharaoh's house. And when the money was depleted in the land of Egypt, and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph, and said, Give us food, for why should we die before you because we have no money? Then Joseph said, Pledge me your livestock and I will pay you wages for your flocks, if your money is gone. Their livestock was then entered as a pledge to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for horses, flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the donkeys, and he refreshed them with food for all their cattle for that year. When that year was ended, they came to him the second year and said to him, We will not hide it from my master, how that our money and the herds of cattle for my master are come to an end. There is nothing left in the sight of my master now, but our bodies and our lands. How can we die before your very eyes, we and the ground together? Please purchase us as slaves along with our real estate in exchange for food, so that our real estate and ourselves will be servants to Pharaoh. Give us seed, so that we may live, and not die prematurely, and that the soil is not ruined. Then Joseph purchased all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, and everyone in Egypt sold their fields, because the famine became much worse for them, so the land was deeded to Pharaoh. And as for the people, from one boundary of Egypt to the other they were reduced to slavery. Only the land of the priests did he not purchase, for the priests had a share assigned to them from Pharaoh and did eat their allotment that Pharaoh consecrated to them. So their lands were not sold. Then Joseph said to the people, I have purchased you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you, and you can now sow the soil. And when the harvest comes you will give the 5th part to Pharaoh, and 4 parts will be your own, for seed of the field and for your food, and for those of your households and for food for your children. And they answered, You have saved our lives, let us find favor in the sight of my master and we will be Pharaoh's slaves. Then Joseph established a law over the land of Egypt to this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, excluding the land of the priests that were not retained by Pharaoh. And Israel lived in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, so the whole lifespan of Jacob was 147 years. And the time drew near that Israel must die, and he called his son Joseph, and said to him, If I have now found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh, and deal with me in lovingkindness and faithfulness. Bury me not in Egypt. But I will lie down with my forefathers, and you will carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burial site. And he answered, I will do as you have said. And he commanded, Take an oath to me. And he pledged to him. And Israel bowed himself down upon the bed's headpost. After some time had passed, it was reported to Joseph, Your dad is sick, and he then brought with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Then Jacob was told, Your son Joseph comes to you. So Israel then revived his strength, and sat up on his bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. He spoke to me saying, I will make you branch off and become many, and I will make of you a company of people, and will give this land to your offspring after you for an age-lasting possession. And now your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born to you in the land of Egypt before I traveled into Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. Now your other offspring, which you gender after them, will be yours, but will be assigned the name of their brothers in their inheritance. And when I came from Paddan, Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan during the journey, when we were still a distance from Ephrat, and I buried her near the roadway to Ephrat, the same as Bethlehem. And Israel observed Joseph's sons, and said, Who are these? Then Joseph said to his dad, These are my sons who Elohim has given me in this land. And he replied, Bring them to me and I will bless them. The eyes of Israel were dulled by age so that he could not see. And he brought them near to him and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face again, and Elohim has showed me also your offspring. So Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the ground. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near to him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand, and laid it on Ephraim's head, which was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, prudently crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph, saying, Elohim, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who shepherded me all my lifetime to this day, the angel that redeemed me from all bad things, bless the boys, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac. Let them grow into a multitude in the middle east of the earth. Then when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it shook him up, and he grabbed his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, This is wrong, my father, because this is the firstborn, put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and replied, I know, my son, I know, he too will become a people, and he too will be great, but truly his younger brother will be greater than him, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations. He blessed them that day, saying, In you shall Israel bless, saying, Elohim establish you as Ephraim and as Manasseh, and he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Joseph, I am dying, but Elohim will be with you and will return you again to the land of your forefathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers that I seized from the hand of the Amorite by my sword and bow. Then Jacob called to his sons and said, Gather yourselves together so I can tell you what will happen to you in the last days. Gather yourselves together, and give ear, you sons of Jacob, listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of nobility and the nobility of power. Unstable as water, you will not have the nobility because you went into your father's bed, then profaned yourself sexually, when he went into my bed. Simeon and Levi are brothers, their swords are an arsenal of violence. By my life do not enter into their circles, let my honor not be united with their assembly, for in their anger they killed men, and in pleasure they hamstrung the ox. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their rage, for it was fierce. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Judah, you are he who your brothers will praise, your hand will be on the neck of your enemies, your father's children will bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub, from the prey, my son, have you come up, he has stooped and couched as a lion, or as a lioness, who will rouse him up? The scepter will not be abolished from Judah, nor a governor of Elohim, until Shiloh come, and to him shall the cleansing of the people be. He will harness his donkey to a vine tree, his female donkey's colt to the choicest branch, he will wash as a fuller his clothing in wine, his vestment in the blood of grapes. Red are the eyes with wine, and white are the teeth with milk. Zebulun will settle on the seacoasts, and he will harbor ships with his utmost border as far as Zidon. Issachar is a strong donkey couching down between the saddlebags. And he saw the resting place was good and the land being pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to bear, and was a tributary slave. Dan will judge his people, as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a serpent by the way, a horned snake in the road that bites the heels of the horse, so that his rider shall fall backwards. I have eagerly waited for your salvation, O YHWH. Dad, a troop will invade him, but he shall invade at the rear. Out of Asher his food will be rich, and he bestows foods to kings. Naphtali is a deer sent away, he gives elegant words. Joseph is a fruitful son, even a fruitful son by a spring whose daughters run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him and shot at him, and opposed him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty Elohim of Jacob. From there comes the shepherd with the Urim-Thummim stone of Israel, even by the Elohim of your father who shall help you, and by the Shaddai, who shall bless you with blessings of the cosmos above, blessings from the deep places where buried stones are mined, blessings of the breasts, and of the womb. The blessings of your father have eclipsed the blessings of my ancestors. Up to the utmost bound of the age-lasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of, the consecrated, one among his brothers. Benjamin will tear in pieces as a wolf, at sunrise he will devour the booty, and at night he will divide the plunder. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father had spoken to them, and he blessed them, each according to the blessing he had bestowed on them. And he commanded them and said to them, I am to be taken to my people, so bury me with my forefathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave in the field at Machpelah east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham purchased with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a graveyard property. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his woman, there they buried Isaac and Rebekah his woman, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is there came from the children of Heth. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he withdrew his feet into bed and died, perishing from his people. Then Joseph fell on his father's face, and shed tears over him and hugged him. Joseph commanded his slaves the physicians to embalm his dad, and the physicians embalmed Israel. Now 40 days were completed for him, these are the days of those to be embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. And when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the house of Pharaoh saying, If I have now found favor in your eyes, talk directly to Pharaoh saying, My dad made me pledge saying, Let me die in my grave that I have excavated for myself in the land of Canaan, you will bury me there. Now therefore let me depart and bury my dad, and I will then return. And Pharaoh replied, Depart and bury your father according to what he made you pledge. So Joseph departed to bury his dad, and with him went all the slaves of Pharaoh, the elders of his house and all the elders of the land of Egypt. And all the house of Joseph, and his brothers, and his father's house left, only their children, and their flocks, and their herds, remained in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very numerous body of people. Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad that is beyond Jordan, and there they mourned with a great and very grievous wailing, and he made a 7-day period of mourning for his dad. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, they exclaimed, This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians. Therefore it was named Abel-Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. And his sons did for him exactly as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and buried him at the cave in the field of Machpelah, former property of Ephron the Hittite, before Mamre, that Abraham had purchased with the field for a graveyard. Then Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers, and all that left with him to bury his dad, after he had buried him. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their dad was dead, they thought, Joseph will maybe hate us, and will certainly return to us all the bad things that we did to him. And they sent a messenger to Joseph saying, Your dad did command before he died saying, So will you say to Joseph, Forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did you wrong. So now please forgive the transgression of the slaves of the Elohim of your dad. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him those things. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they replied, We are your slaves. And Joseph answered them, Fear not, for I am Elohim's outpost. As for you, you devised against me the bad, Elohim however devised it for good, in order to do, as has happened this day, to keep alive a numerous people. Now therefore do not fear, for I will support you, and your children. Then he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph lived in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the 3rd generation, the children also of Machir the son of Manasseh were brought up upon Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am dying, and Elohim will surely visit you and bring you out of this land to the land that he pledged to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel pledge saying that Elohim will certainly concern himself for you, and you will carry my bones from here also. After this Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt.